We are starting the Facebook part, and I have a lot of sharing to do in a very short amount of time.
George says that you have a sun glare on your face.
No, I have a light glare on my face.
Okay, it's that.
That's just light. But if you turn that off, I'm not gonna have. No, I have a light glare on my. You can't turn that off. I'm not gonna have any light. Oh, you can. Oh, well, yeah, that's not gonna make a difference.
Is it better?
I don't know. No, not really. I'm shiny. What can I say? So we are live on Facebook. Thank you all, if anyone is here yet, for the not so fun pre-show sharing of the program, which is, I assure you, not exciting. But we are in our pre-show. We will be starting very, very shortly, as you all know. Looks like the group is up to 890, which is great to see. We appreciate you, whoever the new folks are in the group. And let me just add, if I might, in this pre-show portion of the program, the very not fun sharing part of the program. There are some national group outlets that I normally share the program to that I have been unable to do so because of the way that Facebook has changed. And I think unwittingly to some groups have changed how you can share to groups. It's changed the configuration of some groups and turn them into business type pages as opposed to just groups, and my ability to share to them has discontinued. Among them, the Pennsylvania Progressive Caucus, the Our Revolution national page, Justice Democrats, who else am I? There's a few, and it's a bummer. And if this message somehow gets through to you, come on. If this message, he tried to say, somehow gets through to you, I would ask that you please have a good look at your page and adjust it accordingly, because now it literally looks like a business page where nothing and no one can post anything other than the folks, I think, that run it, and that's a bummer. Occupy Democrats has become that way. It's just a bad scene, kids. And it's a change that I think most groups don't even know happened to them. So that stinks. And we're almost there for the nationals. Start doing our group sharing very shortly. Poor Tamara, bored to death. Bored to tears as I do this part. I'll tell you what, Tamara, for whatever it's worth, we go through this every week, and what we find is that Facebook obviously has some of the best programmers on the planet, but yet cannot find or make an easy way to share to multiple places at one time. You have to do it all one at a time. So let's do our groups real quick. Hello, Saucon Democrats, Lehigh Valley Progressive Network, I Thrive, April's group, Union County Democrats, Women's reproductive, 1 million strong for pro-choice reproductive and women's health, the Progressive Party, United NEPA Alliance, Buckeyes and Beyond, one of our out-of-state groups. We're so grateful for them. The Folding Chair Democrats, Our Revolution Signal Boost, the Progressive Pints, we love that name. Hub for Progress, great friends at the Hub. We thank them for allowing us to share the show every single week. The Pennsylvania Democratic Politics, We Want Fundamental Change Now, appropriate show for them this week. Indivisible Resistance in Laurel Highlands, George Simpson political comments and discussion. Pennsylvania for the People, Indivisible Nightingales, Blue Revolution, Let's Build a New Allentown Together, Progressive Democrats for the People. The Mac Pack, one of our past guests, Heather Mack. Indivisible Narberth and Beyond, Flip PA, PA 9, Indivisible PA, Secret 10, Lehigh Valley, I guess it's not a secret if I say it, Lehigh Valley Young Democrats, Advocates for Immigrants and Refugees this week, I think fits, Progressive Greens in Massachusetts, the Urban Media Lancaster Urban Media Discussions, Hellertown, Lower Sauk and Fierce, Lycoming Progressives, PA 11, Racism Has No Home in Lycoming, great group. Georgia Runoff, one of our out of states, For Our Future Central, and so many more that just blanked on me because, heaven forbid. Wow, I can't believe the problems I'm having this week. Looking very amateurist to my esteemed guest. Looking very, very shoddy to my esteemed guest. Just get the rest of these groups and we will start on 101 late. We will be there. I'm going to have to start earlier because, boy, this Facebook change is really wreaking havoc with me. Okay, I think that's everybody. Volume down, swipe, and okay, we are going to start 5:05. That's actually pretty good. 3, 2, 1, and we will be on the radio.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do.
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. But it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. 'Cause it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. And it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair? We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy and a change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. A couple minutes late, he said, the supposed professional. A couple minutes late. Welcome, welcome, welcome. From my humble second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, part of these United States, on this planet Earth, the only one we have. Third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect live for October 3rd, 2021. A beautiful, dare I say, summery, fall, autumnal, summery kind of day here in the Lehigh Valley. I am a little bit late because I was extremely undisciplined in my timing today. Let me be very, very blunt. I was extremely undisciplined in my timing today. Kristen and I tried to sneak in the Garlic Festival in Easton, Pennsylvania, and we did. And we just kind of kept looking at things and talking to people and having lovely conversations. And we just I simply lost track of time. I never blame her for anything. It's always my fault. So I did that. So we are about 5 minutes late, but here we are back with you live and proud to be so. And we are thrilled to be with you. We thank you for being here. Every single last one of you, every single person that listens, watches live on the recording, goes to the YouTube, the Instagram, the LinkedIn, the so on. We could not do this program without you being there. You are extremely important to us, every single one of you. And wherever you might fall on the political spectrum as well, you are welcome here. We may not always disagree, but then again, debate brings education and understanding. It is conversations that we need to start having with each other again to rebuild and resow and regrow this nation. So we thank you all for being there. Wherever you might be across the Facebook universe, and we have shared, I'm showing 89 shares this week of the program. We thank you for that. You can stay wherever you might be across the Facebook universe. Stay there, watch wherever you are watching, be perfectly comfortable, listen in the background, and enjoy the program at wherever of the nearly just shy of 90 places that we have shared the program this week. If you were with us before we went live with hot101.net, there are a couple of national pages that I was not allowed to share the program to this week because Facebook has changed the rules. If you, by the way, if you are the administrator, not to go off on a tangent, but I'm going to go off on a tangent. If you are an administrator of a page, a group page, or anything similar to a page anywhere on Facebook, your rules have changed about who can run it, who can post there, and things like that. So there are 3 big national outlets that I have not been allowed to post to this week. So hopefully you folks will somewhere along the way meander through, find us, and come back home to us. But whatever group that you might be in, I listed a good number of them before the program began, that we share the program to. Stay there, enjoy, listen in the background, get the kids ready for a Monday return to school and a Monday return to work for you. During dinner, if you're outside enjoying the nice weather, great. However, and this I very much hope that you will do so if you come over to our home group Facebook page. That other side of information, you will be able to take part with us in this program and in this conversation. We will see your comments right there. You'll see the video in the timeline, tap on it, it expands, and then you get to comment, and we hope that you will do so. There is that. So for our sisters and brothers and friends and family at hot101.net, one of the originators of global Internet Radio, thank you very much. A sincere and deep thanks to you for allowing us to be part of your Sunday. Yet again, very proud to be back with you live and to be on the trailblazing signal of hot101.net. Very, very proud to be part of the hot101.net family. If you do not know how to listen to hot101.net, it's really very simple. Our web address is our name. It's hot101.net. You can also listen through a myriad of apps. There is a hot101.net app in the Apple App Store for your Apple devices. There is a hot101.net app in the Google Play Store for your Android devices. And you can go to the TuneIn Radio app, which works on all devices. And just go up to the search bar and search for hot101.net. And you can also now tell Alexa to play hot101.net, and we hope that you will do exactly that. And our friends and family at TCP, the Culture Professional, thank you for allowing us to be part of your Roku channel, your internet radio station, and your very large Facebook presence. We are proud to be part of your family as well. I have prattled. We will open up the phone line later in the program. You can live tweet us at That Kennedy Talk. You can email me, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. And you, of course, can comment on the Facebook post wherever you might be, but I won't see them if you do not come to the home group Facebook page. But I have prattled on long enough. Let me get to our guest. Our guest is Tamara Anderson. If you were lucky enough, really, to come to the Our Revolution online event that we held, it was August 7th, I believe it was, if I have the date right, you were able to meet some extraordinary people. One of those folks is Tamara Anderson. She is with the Racial Justice Organizing Committee, I believe based in Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken. And the event that we held that day was structured and primarily based on discussing this manufactured hysteria and the almost mystification, the devilization, I think it may have just created a word, demonization, I didn't create that word, of the subject, because I can't really say issue, because it's not an issue, it's a non-issue, it's a manufactured outrage over critical race theory. And that was really what the event was supposed to be about. And it was about that in large measure. But it grew and it kind of expanded and became a greater conversation, not just about what is the myth of race, and we will get into that in a second, but really about it, from me, at least what I took away from it. I was having mic problems that day. I couldn't talk too much. That's why it was such a great event, because I couldn't talk that day. We were, because as you can tell, I can prattle on a bit. We were having, the discussion kind of grew, and it grew from me. What I took away from it, I think one of the beauties of the event is that so many people took so many different things away from it. I took away from it a discussion of community and the lack of community that we have now. And that these very small fissures that have always existed throughout the American society have been exploited and wedges driven in them. And that these very small fissures have become cracks. The cracks have become crevices. The crevices have become canyons. And for me, I actually took a hopeful note away from it, because I don't think that this issue is insurmountable. And I actually took that away from the event. And I'll be interested to ask my guest if she took that away from it, but that's what I took away from it. I actually took some hope away from it. And of all the great events that we have done at Our Revolution, as many of you know, that I'm a very proud member, officer, I guess officer, we don't really have officers at Our Revolution PA, but a little higher up in it. A very proud member of Our Revolution. It's one of the greatest events we've done. which is not to say we've done 100 different events, but we've done a few. We've done, even before we started doing them every other month, we used to do other stuff. And it was the event that garnered, I think the last time I looked, there were thousands of views. And the reach for it was almost 10,000. People were watching it on the national page. It was a big deal. And again, it was a great event because I couldn't talk the whole time. Probably had a lot to do with it. But let's get to our guest. And she was a bedrock of that event. And I would like to think, Tamara, that event made you a star, but I think you made us a star that day. And it was a wonderful, wonderful event. So I wanted to have Tamara to come back, and she was kind enough to do so and lend her time with us today. So let me introduce, let me say this too. I should say this too. We were expecting a second guest, and that's Maurice Bernard. Now, Maurice emailed me earlier in the day that life caught up with him. And as we know, I might be speaking to you from a studio, but it's a studio that I have set up in my own home. We're not in a radio studio. We're not in a TV studio. You have heard this program before where I have bumped into the microphone. I think I didn't spill water. I mistakenly shut a computer down once. We had a power problem. I mean, life happens, I guess, is my big point. My cat has walked on screen. You've been able to hear her in the back. I mean, we've had guests where their dogs and kids have walked through. I guess my point is that today some life caught up with Maurice. And even though he tried to clear the calendar and get some things set off to the side so he could be with us here today, he just could not. We are very disappointed for that, but we absolutely understand it. So as disappointed as we are, we understand it. And Maurice is a part of the Kennedy Effect family now. He's a part of the Our Revolution family, and we will be welcoming him back, I guess back, you would say, to the program at a future date. But this Sunday, life just kind of collapsed in around him. So we wish him the best. He is not ill. He is perfectly fine. The family is fine. Just a lot of crap kind of came down on him today. So we are sad that he's not here, but we know he's well. We wish him well, and he will be back with us at a future date. So let me get to introduce our guest again, Tamara Anderson. Tamara, after a very long introduction, probably a way too lengthy introduction, I'm glad, and I'm glad for, humbled by, and appreciative of your patience. And I want to say welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here and interested. I was glad to hear what you took away from it. And it's true. I felt like the emails that I received afterwards, there were a cornucopia of people, different views that were taken away, or different ideas, or at least like access points, I like to say, because all this really is just a continuity of systemic racism always seeping up, right? Because as a country, I like to say in my history classes, we just, we don't deal with that well. The talking about it is equivalent to jumping on the third rail. Yeah. We always try to race ahead to the let's all work together and forget everything happened in the past. And I'm like, that's not how you do things, which is why, and we even see that, globally, like we see that in the Middle East. Like there's a lot of sides that are often left off the table as you try to push through. We also see, with the success of social media, you also get to see a lot of sides play out publicly, and not always maybe the side you don't always see the side you want to see on social media.
Before we get too deep into it, I want to ask you two questions. I'd like to ask you what has been our traditional opening question to the program, because I want you to answer this before. I know we're going to have a lengthy and detailed discussion, and it's going to be a brilliant discussion because you're brilliant, not because I am. But I want to ask you what is our traditional opening question, because I think it's going to inform a lot of people about why I asked you to come and visit us, in addition to all the time that you were kind enough to spend with us at Our Revolution. And that is our traditional opening question, an intentionally vague question, because I love to see the different ways that people take the answer. Who is Tamara Anderson, And how did you get here?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I would say, who is Tamara Anderson? So I like to think of, I thought of myself, I like to think of myself as a Black film change maker who is pessimistic and hopeful all at the same time, right?
Is that all? Nothing. That's easy.
Yeah,
That's
no,
all?
I like to also think of
No
myself.
pressure there.
I like to think of myself. I also consider myself, because I am a professional artist and producer. I also very much work in the connective pieces, connective tissue of where like art, media, organizing, unions, where all these things exist. I find myself always in the gap, which can be exciting work. Sometimes it can be exhausting work. And then of course, in the middle of that, something that has informed me for the last 20 plus years is being a mother to a daughter who is equally outspoken. I have no idea where she's from. Equally outspoken, equally finding their place in this world, I would like to say. You know what I'm saying?
Right now, where would she have ever gotten such a thing? Where did that come from?
Right. I'm always like, it's so funny when
the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree.
No, like it's so interesting when you have these serious conversations and you hear what comes out their mouth and you're like, wow, that sounds like I'm talking to myself. That's weird. And so, or even hearing new stuff, like I love the fact that they have blossomed into like new things, new opinions about the world, about gender justice, about how do you exist on a college campus that you may not be centered in, right? That type of, how do you find your space without erasing yourself, right? I think so. Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's what was on my mind when you asked it. The first thing that came to me. So yeah.
Let me ask you this other small, easy, simple question. This isn't the easiest persuasive argument that I have tried to make with, especially with self-identified Republicans, as I feel there are very few real ones. The rich are real ones. But the quote unquote man on the street, I don't think there's a lot who are actually real when you discuss progressive policies with them and they repeatedly go, oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, oh no, I agree with that. They are in fact self-identified. They are who they are because they have been told to be that rather than thinking about what they actually are. But one of the less persuasive arguments that I have had, sadly, and I do mean sadly, is this idea of race. And it's from that where my question comes from. From a scientific standpoint, from a dare I say, an evolutionary standpoint, not a class standpoint, but how many races of human beings are there?
Right. So we know that race is a socially contrived construct. Like that's not even a college fancy term. It literally is a construct that was created as early as the 1400s, along with the categorizations of plants and animals, right?
Right. And forgive me, I'm not trying to cut you off. I just want to be very, very clear here. And at the risk of oversimplifying it or making a bad analogy, and I sure as hell don't want to do that. If we were to look at something like cats, birds, snakes, there's one umbrella characterization or classification
Mhm.
of cats, but there are many, many different cats with different physical attributes,
Mhm.
but they're all cats.
Mhm. Just
You
like
and
we're all
I,
right. Like, so we're all human, right? We're all a part of the human race. But of
so
course, the
we simply
problem is
have,
that, yeah.
in addition to the fact that you are a female and I'm a male, I promise I am. I don't know why I'm trying to be goofy for some dumb reason. I have no idea why. I think my brain is still like, you're late, you're late, you're late. And I haven't settled into my own program yet. Despite the fact that I am one gender and you are another,
Mhm.
despite the fact that you have a heck of a lot more melanin in your skin than me, because I am damn near translucent. If I get the light the right way, you will just see through. I'll disappear into the background. You and I are the same
Mhm.
race.
Yeah.
You understand why I'm trying to drill this home.
No, I mean, it's the same. I think it's the same thing that Toni Morrison has said in a million interviews where she has viscerated her white interviewers with truth and honesty. It's like we are part of the human race. I mean, that really is.
But
That
Dr.
is
King
it.
made this point.
Mhm.
I don't know that he made it exactly in the same language, and I would never put myself in that classification, but this is part of the point that he made,
Mhm.
that when we lift up our brothers and sisters of color, we lift all of ourselves up.
Right. But when you have been taught from birth, from inception, that there's a difference and that there's whiteness at the center. I mean, even when we talk about race, we don't talk about whiteness. Usually when we talk about race, we talk about everybody else. How do everybody else who's not white fits into it, right? And when you as a person bring up, well, let's talk about whiteness, you can literally hear the room go, what do you mean, right?
Mm.
Because that would require the group to think about how they have been placed in the center without very little effort of their own, right? And then people will say, well, we don't want to talk about that. And you're like, okay. The whole thing is that it is, and in order for like the horrible things that have happened in Americans past and Americans present, it is important to have that difference for you to have a devaluation, right? Because then it's easier to put your foot on somebody's back when you think that they deserve to be there, as opposed to thinking of themselves as being somehow equal to you, right? That's why I think I love these DNA tests that become so popular, because there's so many markers that we share across the human race, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, when you look at that, you're like, oh, so we're not very different from each other, even on a very cellular level. And so, yeah, I mean, I always, my hope has always been you see people take care of each other, because, regardless of your religious or spiritual orientation, you would hope that people would just take care of each other, because they would take care of each other. Like, I think when we look at some of the issues that we deal with, some of them are really just as basic as people being more out for self than for the community, which is another. And I mean, don't get me wrong, this is also a part of higher level, because we are complex mammals, right? Because we're complex mammals, this idea of ostracizing or creating divisions within is also very human. That's not non-human. It's very human to be like, this is my tribe and you go there, right? We see it in dolphins and penguins scientifically, anthropologically,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like those are the two that have the most similar relationships that humans have, where they are with a partner for a really long period of time.
Like geese mate for life, ducks mate for life. There are documented examples, and not rare examples, Certainly a lesser percentage as in the human population, but there are documented examples of same-sex relationships in penguins, ducks, geese, in these not creatures, but why was I going to say creatures? My God. And in non-human species, let's put it that way, that do mate, monkeys that do mate for life. Which is
And
not
so
to take us off in a different tangent. I'm just saying.
right. But
that
the thing is, if we're looking to science,
right,
we can't just look to science to cherry pick what supports what's already messed up about us. It's
support
better
your own
to,
belief.
right. It's better to cherry pick. I mean, not cherry pick. It's better to look at it, hopefully, with a very more holistic view. But I still believe like this all goes back to K to 12. It very much goes back into the idea of self-actualization. Like you said something earlier about somebody on the street that you meet that identifies as this, but maybe was told to be that way, right? That has a lot to do with the lack of self-actualization. Like actual self-actualization is the connection between mind, body, and spirit, where you take things you have learned and it becomes your own, but you also, something in your cerebral cortex actually changes to basically create like this unique pathway for you.
Well,
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I always use the term self-identified Republicans because if I have a strict policy debate or discussion, or the all too few, sadly, self-identified Republicans, you know, if we just do an economics only discussion, 74% of self-identified Republicans support some form of single-payer health care. They support free college, or at a minimum, at least 2 years of community college free. They support taxing the wealthiest 1% and the largest corporations higher. They support infrastructure spending. They support the government and the Medicare or Social Security Administration on behalf of Medicare, because Social Security runs Medicare, to negotiate for drug prices. So I label them as self-identified because they're simply being taught, you know, the joke, it's not a joke, but the kind of meme-y joke of what is Fox News? It's billionaires paying multi-millionaires to tell what's left of the middle class that the poor are the ones that are robbing. So that's why I identify them as self-identified. And part of this discussion, you know, one of the most powerful things I saw was actually a week ago, not earlier today, but a week ago on the Sunday show with Jonathan Capehart. And he had Steve Schmidt, the Republican operative who ran John McCain's, several of John McCain's campaigns, but his presidential campaigns. And they were discussing the current state of Republicans. I don't call them a political party anymore because they're not a functioning political party. They're a corporation. Their sole purpose is to drive revenue up to the top, to the shareholders, the people that own them. That's the definition of a corporation. It's not a political party. You usually have to have a platform to be a political party. They don't have one. And he said, as they were discussing, you know, Stuart Stevens was there as well, and he was talking very bluntly about that we need to consider, Democrats need to wake up. People in the street need to wake up and realize that the structure of the Republican Party, he continued to refer to them as a party, its sole function now is authoritarianism. It can only get what it wants through authoritarianism, through voter suppression, expenditures of billions of dollars, police intimidation, military intimidation, conspiracy theory, lie, fear, division. And they turned to Steve Schmidt and he said, we can't discuss all these things without realizing the race animus that is behind all of it. The voter suppression efforts are not just to keep Democrats from voting, but specifically Democrats of color, because they vote in their own interest.
And they also vote in high percentages.
And we can't talk about what Republicans have turned into without talking about the racial animus and the stoking of the fires through lies, through conspiracy theory, through name it, without talking about the racial behind it. I don't think that the majority of self-identified Republicans are racist, but they are being preached to, dare I say, if I could use the word preached, but they are being spoken at with that clear animus behind it. Sometimes it's outright in front of you. Sometimes it's the keywords. We all know what the keywords are. The urban population, the welfare queens, the
So like the dog whistle terms.
right, the takers, not the makers. Is that where, for you, is that where the hope comes from? Do you see this as more of an this racial animus is there? We know it's there, but do you see the rise of it as more of a constant, with the constant dog whistle in the ear, or do you think this is real? I mean, I know a certain percentage of it is real, but
I think it's, so for me, if I'm understanding this correctly, let me go back. So we're talking about the parties themselves, Republican, Democrats, like as a political party, how they're corporatized, how they look up. So I want to also start with saying that both sides are very corporate, which is why even on the Democrat side, you have like the Green Party and the Progressive Party, like you have people, and you like when you think about the AOCs of the world, and people who have run for the House recently, those individuals would not fully identify as Democrats. They self-identify as pushing against the Democrats becoming so close to the center with the Republicans, right? They're like, they want to push against the fact that we want to create some sort of party for the people, right? We want to create some sort of voice that reflects what people want on the ground. And we want to be, by not even taking corporate dollars for elections, those types of statements being made, right? So
I actually think they're pushing the party back to its roots, but I understand. Yes, I completely understand your point. I completely agree with your point. Right. I would simply say that
I would say that it's so hard to get back to I find it, I don't ever want to dismiss it by saying we're trying to go back to something that was, because whatever it wasn't, it worked at that time. We need something for now to help this, like what is this, right? But I also think it's really important. So my pessimism / hopefulness is because I can't help but look backwards and look at the pattern. So anytime, we look about the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, we know those amendments pretty much changed the Constitution. But they changed the Constitution so much that even today, we are constantly still fighting for those amendments to be realized in the fullest of their fruition, right? Even the recreation of those amendments with the Civil Rights Bills of 1960s, there's always this pushback, there's this volatile pushback. So for me, then the question becomes why? Which goes to that comment that the person made about the racial animus that is there, right? We can't talk about any of this unless you talk about why did it happen. We like to say the myth of Reconstruction is that it failed. That is not true. Reconstruction is very successful. That's why they were like, it's got to be over.
That's why I had to stop.
Right.
Because it was working.
It was working. And you stopped it very violently, with the presence of Black codes and Jim Crow. And so now we fast forward and we look at documentaries of what happened in the past couple of elections across Georgia and Texas and Florida. Spaces where in Florida, where the voters voted to say, yes, if you have a felony record, you should be able to vote. The public said that, regardless of Republican, Democrat, whatever, whoever. The public, by a majority, said that should happen.
I think that was a 60+%
Mhm.
as well. I think it was almost 2/3 to a third.
It
The
was.
Florida referendum that if you were convicted of a crime, you served and you were released, you get your voting rights back.
Yes. And it was a huge win. And everybody was very excited. And the state literally rallied against them to postpone the very thing that the people voted saying yes to, right? So every time you make a step forward, even if it's a baby step forward, it appears to be this concentrated machine, almost like if I always thinking like sci-fi anime images, right? I feel like a machine literally just comes out and it's like, rah, rah, no, this can't happen. Like, nope, right? And then once again, what that does is that erodes and it lessens people's will to vote. Because then people start to believe just what the purpose of this machine is. They start to believe their vote doesn't matter, right? But the problem is we've seen this before. Even right before the Trail of Tears, the first 5 nations used the courts to keep their land and to maintain treaties. They weren't just, people walking around like, let's sign on pieces of leaves and tree bark. No, they used court systems.
Yeah, they did.
To actually do. One of the most famous ones is Worcester v. Lee. So the Cherokee won in the Georgia Supreme Court that they should be able to maintain and stay on their land. The president at that time, Andrew Jackson, and the state of Georgia did not uphold the ruling. So then hence the Trail of Tears embarked. So we have constantly seen groups of people, right? Use the very levers that democracy, and I like to say our emerging democracy, gives us. And they have constantly been hit with this machine. The machine needs to be talked about. The machine is wrapped in white supremacy and systemic racism. It is like, it is like I like to say it's like a fur coat. It's just wrapped around, has all these things. And the question is outside of talking about it and outside of doing the work like we saw in Georgia and Florida to lead to these wonderful referendums being passed, or like space in Georgia where you're getting people back on the voting rolls, right? You're reversing all the purging that happened several years ago on voters for voter rolls. And the fact the vote is so important. And we also don't talk about the largest population that turns out to vote every year, which is Black women. They are a group to be reckoned with. That in any election, local, federal, when you look across demographically, they are often the highest number in those elections.
Let me ask you that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that this particular subset of American humanity, as we have discussed, we are all one race. So why do you think that this one particular subset of our society, our community, something that I preach every week on this program, that something that I'm sure you are aware of. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything that you didn't already know. When Margaret Thatcher came to power in the UK in the late 70s, because she was the predecessor before Reagan. She was the Reaganism before Reaganism.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Trickle down, the cut taxes on rich people, privatize the government, privatize the NHS, privatize the railways, privatize.
And from a working class family, which where you find a lot of sometimes that happens, which goes back to your description,
which is
like
strange.
somebody being told, yes.
Which is somewhat strange. But one of the things that she told, especially when she attacked the unions, viciously attacked the unions, destroyed them, tried to simply end their existence. And when asked about her policies and the very fundamental, basic bedrock changes she was making to the UK, especially a post-war UK.
Yes.
She said, because why are you doing this to the people of Great Britain? And she said, because we're not a community. We're not a society. We're a group of rugged individuals.
Yes.
Who need to be free to make their own changes. This is, and Reagan said the same thing. We are not a community. We are a country of rugged individuals and personal freedom and yada, yada, yada. I think it's funny how Republicans talk about personal freedom and small government and home rule and all that until, a city like Philadelphia tries to pass a gun law. And then suddenly you can't do that. Or ban plastic bags or something like that.
Because the idea is based on, it's such a paradox, because it's based on taking freedoms away from somebody else so that you can have those freedoms. Yes.
But if we are not, after 40, 50 years of this preaching of that we are not a community, which again, I think is complete BS. We don't swear on this program usually, unless I slip. That happens occasionally. But which is complete BS. We are a community. Why has this subset of our community, women of color, especially Black women of color, why have they stayed so cohesive, do you think, in their voting patterns?
And let me also add this. It's not that they're just cohesive. They have the tendency to save an election.
Oh, absolutely.
People, right? The very people who would demonize them, they make the person possible to be in power who's going to give everybody something, right? They're not just voting for their own self-interest. So they actually vote like a community should vote, for the greater community. That's something important. Well, I think, oh no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I've said before, and I've said a lot, and I say it every week, it's probably on the bingo card, that no, we have a show bingo card. You'll see it. George will put it up and you'll see it. You can play along at home. It's a lot of fun. You win absolutely nothing, but it's fun and it keeps you engaged. That when the 99% versus the 1%, and it is a versus the 1%, let's be honest, when the 99% votes in its own self-interest, those are the community interests, because that's why it's 99%. It's why it's 99-1. The three richest people in the United States right now, by the way, folks, the three richest people in the United States have as much wealth as the bottom 50%. Yep. That's three people who own as much wealth as about 160, 170 million people. The richest 400 people on the planet have as much wealth as the bottom half of the planet. 400 versus 3.6, 3.7, 3.8. No, because we're above 7 billion. 3.8 billion with a B, billion people. So really, it's not so much that I'm arguing with you, Tamara, I'm certainly not. But really, when the 99% votes in its own self-interest, that is the community interests. So maybe we're having a semantical discussion, but when
but I also think right. So I think, but I also think in that 99%, there are pockets of people that vote for the 1%, vote with the 1%, right? And
they've been convinced.
I always find it, well, right, because that goes with what you just said, right? Like that is the purpose. That's the purpose of Fox. It's literally like watching an emoji of slices of information. It's almost like a sci-fi movie where they put you in a pod and have you watch a bunch of stuff. And you come out like, you know what I'm saying? So
they hold the eyes, like
right.
cartoon.
It's like you like, it's almost like Minority Report. So you're like, what
yeah.
So I think so I'm gonna go back to some history. So the history where that comes from, and I think the reason why we don't always think about it is because sometimes we don't know this history. This history is not always taught. So when you look at who participated in the bus boycott, it was 80% Black women in the bus boycott. When you look at who contributed the most dollars to the civil rights movement. It was a lot of like Black domestic workers, females, that actually pooled money together through selling a meal, selling of pies, things like that. I mean, Mahalia Jackson herself gave thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in proceeds from her concert. Even when sometimes, you know, church groups would turn her away saying she's becoming too secular. That's a story for another time. But the whole thing is that there have always, I find that that group of women have always been the fuel behind things, but have always also been unspoken and untalked about, quote unquote, heroes of these moments, right? So when it comes to voting, I know in my household, so I grew up predominantly in a female household. Before you talked about reading or any of these other things, you talked about voting and why it was important, and why it was important for you to be active in your local union, and what would you do? You know, my own mother was president of her local at 30 years old of IEA outside of, you know, Chicago. So my whole thing is that I have seen this not just play out, but it also plays out number wise, like whether people are like, well, can I look this up? Yes, statistically, it is literally there, which is interesting because when we talk about that whole rugged individuality, especially Thatcher's idea and Reagan's idea, I do believe that blue collar working class groups fall into what Steinbeck, the writer of Grapes of Wrath and Mice and Men, when he had that famous quote that the poor are nothing more than jealous millionaires, right? Their goal is to be that person. So to be that person, I'm going to vote like that person. I'm going to vote in that person's interest, right? Even if it's not my interest, even if it literally will not help me or my family, right? And that goes into James Baldwin, who talks about the psychosis of race. There's a psychosis that occurs. Like we see pictures of lynchings with children holding dolls and picnic baskets, and we talk about it like it happened 5,000 years ago. It did not. And that means that the descendants of those groups are still percolating around, walking around and sharing their ideas. And that means that there's also like a psychosis that happens in the middle of systemic racism, where the poor, the oppressed begin to take on, you know, like Paulo Freire, you know, his theories on the oppressed individuals when he was working with the working class and the oppressed class in Brazil can very much be seen here. This fact of like the very people who can provide help for everyone are often the ones too that often suffer the most economically, financially, being able to take care of themselves. We even look at housing. So the Housing Act was passed in 1968. And I was just watching a documentary on housing. And I've always known this, but I was like, oh, that can't be true. But thanks to a documentary, I was like, maybe it is. This documentary literally showed that like Black Americans own more property during Jim Crow, which I was like, what? During Jim Crow than they do now. So you have a law now that's supposed to protect you. And there are circumventions all the time around that law. I have had friends, I have had mixed race couples have to erase, you know, as the realtor would tell them, you got to erase the color from this house for us to sell it.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. I see. Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I was looking. Like I didn't quite get that at first, but now I got.
Right.
No, I got it.
That's
it
like
just took me a second to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little slow sometimes. The microphone,
trust you me. When
the
I
microphone
heard
and the headphones make it look so super professional, but sometimes like, huh? Okay.
You're like, oh.
I'm
but
human.
The fact that has to happen means that we're an emerging democracy. We're also an emerging our humanity is emerging, right? Because in order for us to really achieve full humanity, we can't think about ourselves. We have to think about other people. And that's a process if you have been born, bred, beat across the head to see like how rugged individualism is the key to
So
success.
how, but again, if I'm asking the same question, I guess I apologize a bit, but
No.
how is it this subset? How is it your subset, Black women especially, have been able to see through, cut through all of this BS and hang together? And again, literally, as you said, and the history and facts bear it out, save the Democratic Party in some of these elections. It was Black women that gave the Democrats back the House in 2018 and kept it, even though there were some losses,
Right.
but kept it. And it was Black women in Georgia that gave the Democratic Party the Senate. Because, surprise, by the way, folks, if you haven't noticed, because they don't always act that way, Democrats actually do have the majority in the Senate.
Yes.
It was Black women that did that. How has that group, that one,
Yeah, but I
group
think, but that's what I'm
stuck
trying
together?
to say. I think
How have they
because-
stuck together when the rest of us can't?
Right. I think I do believe it is a community. Sometimes I think it's steeped in the DNA. I really do, because it is also something that's taught to you from a very young age as a Black female, right? This idea of community, this idea of taking care of each other. You know, when I think of the numerous people that my grandmother took into her house, white, Black, like just coming into the house to stay because, you know, I don't know, you didn't have any food. This idea, I have always seen Black women in the face of those spaces, right? And, you know, and I don't, Lord, I don't want to.
Is it a motherly thing, or is that an oversimplification?
I don't think it's an oversimplification. I think it's maternal, because some of them don't have biological children, right? I think it's this idea that of who are the keepers of the community. That's really what it is. Because I think that, and that's why we get so lost in the history, because our goal in being there is not to be recorded in the history books. You know, Ella Baker, who basically is the fuel, the grindstone, the reason why you have the civil rights movement, the Marshall Washington, all those things, SNCC, right? She started that with $800 of her own money, borrowed $800 from NAACP, stuff like that. You know, we don't talk about Ida B. Wells being one of the first presidents of, you know, the NAACP. We jump straight to W. Du Bois, as if Ida B. Wells like wasn't there. The fact that it was a woman who recorded the numbers of lynchings in the South and actually made the clear connection that it was connected to sex often. And that she had identified consensual interracial sexual relationships that resulted in some of the worst crimes of violence because of that connection, right? We don't talk, like, you know, that's why her place got burnt down in Memphis and she ended up coming to Chicago. So the whole thing is that we don't talk about that, because I think this is connected to the patriarchy we see just in our country, right? That we don't talk about it because we think that big ideas only come from men, and that big plans are only played out by men. When in our reality, the fact that anything happens is usually because a woman had to put her pinky toe or something in the pot, right? I think it's also, I think you can even go back to even narratives from enslavement, especially American enslavement. You can also see it in the British Isles, across the Caribbean islands, with enslavement in Haiti and Jamaica and Barbados, places like that, where if a family was sold off, it was the women who instantly took in like all of the random families and children to build some semblance of community. Like, I don't think we talk about how many women actually searched for their families during Reconstruction after Civil War. Like, literally put ads in papers, went, you know, some of them went as far as filing lawsuits in courts to win back the custody of their families and children. You know, we don't talk about, like, I think that history is the answer. That's what I'm trying to say. That the fact that it keeps happening over and over again, that's a pattern of something, right? That's if you keep seeing it, that's a pattern. Because, and I'm not saying that everybody has this, but that characteristic keeps popping up, right? We keep seeing it, which means that it's something about that. It's something there that needs
Sometimes
to be
even at its worst, you keep saying it.
yes.
Yeah. 6:02. Oh, just flipped. I was staring at the clock and it literally just flipped while I was staring at it. 6:02 Eastern time here. We are back live. We are back live after a week off of travel and a little bit of a deep breath and a little, to be perfectly blunt, relaxation. We are back live with you. This is the Kennedy Effect live for October. Did I mention live? Did we get to that part live? October 3rd. October 3rd already. My goodness gracious.
No.
2021. We are less than 1 month. We are 30-ish. Yeah, because there's 31 days. 30 days away from General Election Day here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in the state of New Jersey, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and across the nation. Do not, I beg you, do not skip this election cycle. Throughout the nation, there are elections. I can't tell you every state off the top of my head. I can't. I just can't. Okay, I can't. But what I can tell you, the entire legislature in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the governor of the state of New Jersey, and here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we have judicial and local and county races. For God's sake, folks, simply because the year ends in an odd number, does not mean that you get to sit it out. For goodness sakes, vote, no matter what. And
Get those absentee ballots.
Exactly. Or your mail-ins, your absentees, go to the polls, wear a mask and go to the polls. It's safe. Take a little hand sanitizer with you. I think you'll be fine. But please go vote. And one of the well, it should not be odd to you if you're a regular listener to the program, because again, I have always said that this is a free, safe, and open space for anyone of any political persuasion. Every single elected Republican official in the state or in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania can come here. They haven't, and I don't think that's by accident, kids, but they can. So whether you agree with me or not politically, please go vote, because it's your right. It is a constitutional right. The 14th Amendment says that shall not be denied the right to vote. That presupposes the fact that there is one. And it's yours and it's mine, and please do it. Wherever you are watching across the Facebook universe, about 90 shares of the program this week. Thank you so very much. We could not be here if you are not there. You can stay exactly where you are. Continue to watch, listen, enjoy. We hope you enjoy. You're enjoying Tamara, maybe not me so much, but thank you for being there. If you want to come to our home group Facebook page, that is where I will see your questions and your comments. And I have a couple of comments in the chat that I need to bring to Tamara after I get done rambling and doing my reset of the program at the top of the hour. I should be doing it at the top and bottom. I went straight through the bottom of the hour because I was late to the show today. So take that, host. Take that, you host. Be on time for whatever that's worth. So yes. Thank you all for being here. You can come to our home group Facebook page, that other side of information. I can say hello to you. That's where I will read your comments and questions, because we want you to be part of the program. We very much enjoy, respect, listen to, and learn from NPR. NPR is a little lecture-y. We don't like to be lecture-y here. This is your program. We want to take your calls. We want to take your questions, your tweets, your emails, however it is that you decide to connect with us and be part of the program. Talk to me, talk to Tamara, ask us your questions. You probably want to talk to Tamara a hell of a lot more than me because I'm here every week. She's not. But talk to us, interact with the program. This is not a lecture. Hot101.net, our friends, our family, our sisters, our brothers at hot101.net. We are proud to be part of you and honored to be part of you. We don't take it lightly. It means a lot to us. One of the originators, grandparents, if you will, beginners, starters, foundational bricks and stones, keystones of internet radio, global internet radio, our friends and family at hot101.net. If you do not know how to listen to hot101.net, it is so very, very simple. You just, the website, that's the name. It's hot101.net. You can listen straight through there on your desktops, laptops, tablets, phones, etc. If you choose to do it through a tablet or a phone, you can use the apps, any one of three. The power of three, the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store for Android, and the TuneIn Radio app, or really, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net, and these dulcet tones will start flowing out of your smart speaker. And by the way, isn't that why you bought it? And also, of course, TCP, our friends based in Lancaster, PA, their Roku channel and their global internet, and their the growing television force that is TCP. I will soon be, I will put the phone number up on the screen very shortly because I tend to do these things typingly in the background so I don't look so stupid. I will put the telephone number up. Our phone number is 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189, 227. Did I do that right? Yes. 9189. All of a sudden, I was very much questioning myself if I had memorized my own phone number. It's a day, kids. It's summer. We were out festing all weekend, and I don't know what is happening, but we're just all over the place. Tamara, would you want to read a couple of comments that I had gotten? Kristen, who has grown, her stature and stardom has grown well beyond my program, even though she still lives in the house with me. She's eclipsed me greatly as a star and force in all things centered in the universe. Mentions Polly Murray. Are you aware of Polly Murray?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who was one of the most important leaders of the movement,
the reason
but got sidelined. Kristen mentions she was sidelined not just because of the color of her skin and not just because she was female, but because she was gay as well. That's a lot stacked up in this society, sadly. Ashley and our dear friend Ashley Shea, who is a huge soccer fan in all sports, actually, mentions in the chat on Facebook that Black women can change the trajectory of an election, and that is the reason in Georgia why state police have been in the news in the past for pulling over souls to the polls buses and vehicles.
Yes, it's Jim Crow 2.0 in Georgia right now. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what they're calling it.
Even that, though, isn't that almost a tad bit antiseptic? I mean, if you don't really know the depths to which, the pain of which that goes into Jim Crow, just to say, well, it's this thing, it's a bad thing, and it's kind of the second version of it, it kind of sounds almost cleansed in a way, doesn't it?
Right. Well, what I think is also interesting is also that comment is so wonderful, changing trajectory. That it also was organized by Black female organizers, including Stacey Abrams, right? You had these powerful Black women who were like, okay, like what I love is she lost the election and she said, okay, I'm not going away in a great dark night. Not that she ever had. Leading up to the election, this is somebody who has always been like pushing for Georgia to always be better. Like, you know, let's make sure we get people voting, let's have access, blah, blah, blah. But then to gather around her other women who were also very interested, some who were in the legislature, whom some were not, to really battle the state itself, right? Because, you know, a lot of times we think of Georgia, we think of, you know, I don't know what people think of. I know I have friends who live there and they could definitely tell me what they think of it, but I'm gonna let that go. So I think like it's interesting to also have a lot of the new laws, a lot of the new court cases that were fighting against this voter suppression were also led by this really specific group of people. And so what we see, because we just talked about it earlier, Jim Crow was in response, especially, it was really, really in response to the 15th Amendment, the voting amendment, right? And so, which is crazy because the 15th Amendment, ding, 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 not only opened the doors for Black men to vote, it opened the doors for white male Southerners who didn't own no land to vote too, who hadn't been able to vote before, right? It also opened the thing to have public education paid for everybody, right? So once again, you're like, this is good. And people are like, no, it isn't. So it's this whole thing of like, yeah. So no, that's why, the people being pulled over, police hanging out in front of voting places. So now what we're seeing is like another aspect of voter suppression, which is like intimidation, right? Trying to make sure people don't get there. They feel like there should be some fear or something when they get there. But then these same groups are organizing, spaces and car rides, which very much sounds like, the summer of the heat, the whole what happened in the civil rights movement. They're organizing ways to make sure people don't have to go alone. So it's like, they're like, okay, we got a plan. Like, okay, you're not gonna like just keep doing this. And I think it also, like you said, brings back into the conversation, because we don't really talk about it, just what were the legal mechanisms, the legal and social emotional mechanisms of Jim Crow, and how that is reeling back its ugly head, so to speak.
White folk, and by a really good distance, there are 7 billion plus people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And white folk, by a good margin, are not the majority.
No.
How have white folk, be they American white folk or North American, I guess I would say, even United States, Canada, and spotted throughout the Caribbean and Western Europe and even Eastern Europe, how have we maintained such a superiority? I mean, you and I could sit here for a week just to answer that question, but I think you know what I'm getting at. How have we managed to do it? Is it purely suppression, or is it wealth, or is it both?
Oh, I think it's all the above. It's also the idea that we have also been indoctrinated as a culture that white people are the majority, right? That they wield some sort of power that those people who are underneath them can't access. And that comes with money. We see it in the media. We see it in TV. We see it all over, right? And so because of that, and anytime you have like a push to be like, okay, let's, even something as representation on TV or films. Like, that's why I think it's so funny when Reagan is mentioned, because he was also a part of the whole group with the actors union to make sure people were perfect. Purity laws that John Wayne, started the organization. Like, these are the same individuals that had those things happening in film life that trickle down to what we see even today. And so
someone who was actually the president of the Actors Union, who just did a complete 180 and ended up, got sucked up a bit into the McCarthy era. That, started to actually turn on his fellow actors, and there are communists throughout Hollywood and so on. And of course, did the famous film where he said that if we did Medicaid in the 60s, that we'll look back and remember when men were free. Right. Men.
And these are also spaces where mental health care is also usually separated from drug usage and the criminalization of drugs, right? Like, these are all
it's
connected.
Nixon. It wasn't Nixon. It was his chief of staff, not Haldeman. His name is Ehrlichman.
Yes.
Ehrlichman, who said, we can't arrest college students for being college students. We can't arrest people for being black.
Mhm.
We can't even arrest them for opposing our administration and our policies, but we can arrest them for drugs.
Mhm.
So we'll do that.
Yes. And you separate. You end up you end up destroying families. You end up taking the mental health connection to drug addiction. You
From the
take
party
that
of
away.
family values, of course.
Yes. Mhm. No.
But we'll just
I mean,
lock you up on that.
that was like that thing.
And create an industry out of it, and create a profit industry out
Huge
of it.
industry, right? You know,
Right.
you created,
The largest employers in the Commonwealth.
yes,
One of the largest sources of
of
flow
income
through,
and job. Yeah.
through money. Yeah, of flow through money. Absolutely.
And so I think I think it's the connections. I always tell people, like, don't just look at I like to call it weapons of mass distraction. Don't just look at like the titles and the headlines. Look at where it emanates from. Look at where you've seen it before. And then say, okay, what can me and 5 other people do? You know, yes, voting is one aspect of that lever.
It's a
Another
big one.
aspect of that lever is once people get into office, that you are calling them, you are their best friend, that you're like, look, I just don't believe anything you're saying. And so I'm gonna have my 500 friends that voted for you last time, not vote for you this time, whichever, right? It's holding people accountable. It's also making sure that we educate, and people see that as indoctrination, whatever. Education in its inception, the idea of curriculum is actually indoctrination. It is controlled by the state and school boards, and we can get into all that stuff. It's actually created to create citizens that we want to have. So it's already that. But as an educator, you have an opportunity to push back against that. As a parent, you have the opportunity to push back against that by giving all of our children a full understanding of civics. I should not be teaching undergrad students who actually have no idea what the 14th Amendment is, when it's the most important amendment. And like even talking about Pauli Murray, we cannot talk about Ruth Ginsburg and her wins without talking about Pauli Murray, who actually trained her and wrote up her briefs to present in a case. It was Pauli Murray's idea that the only way you're going to win a case on sex discrimination work is to have a male be the defendant, which he was. And that's why we have it. And, you know, working for the ACLU, you know, we know that that's what it was. But the whole thing is that I think like what am I trying to say? Oh yeah, I think that it's really important, the fact that we don't just disconnect it. Like you can't talk about, you know, media without talking about the power that Birth of a Nation had in the country. I mean, the Klan actually had no outfits until the movie came out. They were like, oh, that's a good idea. We should use those. And so like, the fact is, it's like, it's a multifaceted thing. It's voting, it's pushing what you want to see on your TV screen. It's talking with your children about like how they can change things in everyday life, why they should vote, why they should register to vote at the age of 18. And no matter what side of the spectrum you're on, I can't imagine you would not want a group of, you wouldn't want a group of people or a community that is educated and can make decisions, can put stuff on the wall and say, this is why I'm going to vote for you this time, or to vote for this person. You know, these are conversations my daughter and I have all the time, especially when she started, you know, participating in voting for the first time. You know, like the first time, of course, she's like, I'm voting because my mama votes. But the second time, it was like, I got questions about these people. They have, passed some questionable things in my college community, and I want to know how I can change that. Okay, so these are some of the steps, right? Like these are what this looks like.
How much, we're asking obviously big questions.
Yes, they're huge.
You know, questions that you and I could be here for, you know, a year of Sundays taking each individual question. But as obvious as it is, in my humble opinion, to me anyway, and probably to you, how much of a component of this of the racial issue, of the racial divide, is economic based. Because it
it's huge.
seems to me
Mhm.
that one of the great reasons that we don't already have a single payer universal NHS style healthcare system in this country is because a small group of white men didn't want folks of color to have healthcare. One of the biggest reasons why property taxes are still used to fund schooling as a primary funder of schooling is because poor Black neighborhoods can't afford their own schools. And you won't get the same education that the rest of us get, and that makes you cheaper labor. Do we miss, do we forget, do we ignore the economic component
Well,
of racism?
well, yeah, we do. I mean, not only is it that, we also educate children to work minimum wage jobs. So there's several different pockets there. We also have private schools where Jonathan Kozol, who wrote Savage Inequalities, would say, you can't have equity in education as long as private schools exist. Like, it's just an oxymoron.
I don't think you can have it as long as you use a property tax, but that's
no, right. But additionally, you can't have it as long as you have a choice, right? Like when we point to places like Finland, like they're amazing. They don't have they have one system. That's
correct.
Why they have a strong teachers union.
Yeah.
It's one system. Everybody has to invest in that system. That system has to work because everybody has to go to it.
They also have no homelessness in Finland, by the way.
Right. When I have a bunch of systems, I can have a choice. So this is what it is. So it's also not just a few people who don't want other people to have stuff. It's also a few people. It's power and economics. It's economic power, right? It's the power connected to it. We also have a have and have not ideology. So I can't celebrate Harvard if there's not something else that is not Harvard. I can't celebrate Cadillac insurance if there's something that is not that, right? People thrive on what is not that, so that they can have this thing that is unreachable, right? As
the ability to say, I have something and you don't.
Yes, it's huge. It actually is connected very much to economic power. But I'm going to tell you why we don't talk about it. Because we don't talk about, even today, how remnants of our American enslavement institution is still very much a part of our capitalistic system. When you have 30-year mortgages, that comes directly from the loans you would take as a plantation owner to buy human bodies because their lifespan was expected to be 30 years. When you talk about bankruptcy, that comes directly from President Van Buren during the fall of cotton, when he allowed planters to file bankruptcy. It was brand new back then. He's like, well, let me figure out some way to help you. When we think about loan, when we think about even how bodies were calculated and recorded, they're on financial ledgers with the animals and crops and everything else. The way our capitalistic system sets out, the fact that Wall Street is now in public education, deep, as far as standardized testing, as far as the fact that public school districts owe banks all this money. There's this huge thing of debt, keep borrowing from like all these things, and then you pay money to keep the debt going, right? There's this constant thing.
Cash bail.
Yeah. So because of the fact that money is so much integrated in the system, what we're really saying is capitalism itself is racialized. And so to pull them apart, because that's what would have to happen. To pull them apart means the group of people who have all this money, while the people at the bottom do not, have to give that up, because that is the only way the system would recalibrate itself. You cannot actually change this system the way it currently is. You can put some little stop gaps here. You can throw some progressive candidates in. They can make some baby changes. But if capitalism and race are still married to each other, I mean, they are each other's ace boon coos, never going to leave each other's side. If they are like that forever, then the system itself cannot change for the better.
then let me ask you for a comparison's sake. While not perfect, did everyone hear what I just said? While not perfect from a racial divide standpoint. Everybody clear on that? Hope you're all sitting down. While not perfect, is this why race or racial divisions are so much less in the social democratic nations in Western Europe? Because there is that much more proliferation of wealth and a more even, not a perfect, again, not a perfect. There's still rich people in Finland, trust me. And there's still rich people in Sweden and in the UK and in Germany and Italy and Spain. But the economic divide is so much less. There is much more of a level playing field. Is that? But again, it's
But
not
I would also
it's not a utopia.
Right.
But
I would also erase the UK and Spain from that, because the UK has like their very pillars are based upon genocide, colonialism, and enslavement. Same as Spain. And there's remnants of it across. Finland and Sweden, like those other
Scandinavian
Denmark,
countries,
right? Yeah. And they have a tendency to have actually a more socialist system. Because you also have seen it in the fact these are also spaces from the 70s have had females of power in their parliament at very early spots. They were already at 40%. They also have very equitable, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but the way that they punish, their consequences for wrong, I don't want to say wrong behavior, there are consequences for crime.
The criminal justice system.
Different.
Yeah.
It's different. It's very holistic. Even
They
when
they actually have correctional facilities.
Right.
They actually have a criminal justice system as opposed to a criminal justice industry that we have here.
And even like in places like Iceland, where you've had, Reykjavik had that huge mass shooting where young children died. When asked from the families if they would want their criminal justice system to change, over 80% were like, no.
They're also the only nation that jailed any of the big bankers after 2007-8 big crash. Iceland put them all in jail
because it was criminal,
right? Because it was actual real criminal activity.
And we have a tendency to be like, well, maybe it isn't for them. maybe
but it would be for you, and
right.
It would be for me.
And that's why, so that's the problem. You would have to change the system. I mean, not the problem. That is like, you have to look at that. Like anytime you have a country that literally has this, and a lot of it just has to do with, we talk about America dealing with this original sin, and people, toss that term around like a hockey puck on the floor. But I think the thing is that if say you're thinking about this metaphorically, think of this like as your own personal journey in life. When you don't deal with your past, when you don't deal with the things from your past, it comes up every time, if not worse, terrible, horrible as you get older. It is almost like the universe is trying to tell you, please pay attention to me. Pay attention to this and fix it. Like deal with this original issue. Because we have not. Also because, with the lost cause curriculum, we've also just mistaught it for like a bazillion years. You also have a tendency, that's why when people just make a blanket statement saying if we were just more educated, we'll be better. But I go with Ida B. Wells when she had the argument with W. Du Bois. She was like, educated people lynch and shoot people. So that was all. She took that off the table. She was like, yeah, no. And then he was like, well, what about if we make laws? I've seen those laws be circumvented.
Or ignored.
Right. So what you're really asking is, how do you change the hearts of men? That is the question. What changes the hearts? What changes your very heart and soul to do something different?
6:30 Eastern time here on the Kennedy Effect. We are live. It is the 3rd of October, 2021. Tamara Anderson is our guest. Our thoughts to Maurice, who was supposed to join us tonight. He will join us again at some point in the future, and we'll have another program, and I will drag Tamara back here yet again, kicking and screaming. I will drag her back here again. Not another. Oh, I can't. No. We'll be dragging her back again because that was part of the magic of the Art Revolution event. I thought is the way the two of you just started talking to each other, and I felt like the rest of us kind of just dropped in on a conversation. I remember Representative Sims just going, you know, and like, Brian, you want to add to this? He's like, nope, I'm just listening right along with the rest of you. And that was, you know, that was the end of that. That was what we were trying to create here tonight. Anyway, That Other Side of Information is our home group Facebook page. That Other Side of Information, it's been a very quiet chat. The live, you know, people have actually, I don't know if that like people actually watching number is accurate. It always depresses me though, because it's like 1, 2, and 3. I'm like, is there really only 3 people in the entire planet watching this right now? It can't be that.
Sometimes you refresh it and
it always makes me depressed. What can I tell you about? But anyway, wherever you might be watching on Facebook, however, you can stay right there. That Other Side of Information is the home group Facebook page. We will see your comments. I will say hello to you as you enter the room. Hot101.net, Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android, the TuneIn Radio app, and you can tell Alexa, because she's always listening. You can tell her. It is, though. Trust me.
I mean, mine actually started talking when you said it before. I had to like mute myself.
Oh, did you? Oh, because it's always listening. It really is. It's always listening. You can tell Alexa to play hot101.net. And of course, TCP, the Culture Professional, a Black-owned business, by the way, and growing television video powerhouse based right here, actually in Lancaster, PA, by the way. So we're proud to be part of you as well. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. Let's see who's going to be brave and break the ice and be the caller or the first caller this week. Someday I will have a Tom Hartman style program, and the callers will just be stacked up, and I will be able to look through the list and go, who do I want to talk to right now? And but no, we're just taking callers at this point. I do have a question for you, Tamara, that came in from my much better half, sitting over here, but somehow will still not log on. Mika's being very stubborn this week to this Joe. Mika's being very stubborn this week. Do we make, what's that?
Mika's working.
Mika should not be working. Mika should be doing the program is what she should be doing. That's your work assignment for now, by the way. So take that. Do we make a mistake as advocates or activists by not putting more of an emphasis on the 14th Amendment? No matter who is being discriminated against, this is always a fight between those who support and wish to expand, I would say fully recognize, the 14th Amendment and include all people, and those who wish to limit its scope or eliminate it completely. Your thoughts?
Yes, because it gave us citizenship. I mean, that's the
see that you're right again, Mika.
Citizenship and due process are the two integral parts of the 14th Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And
and again, it presupposes the right to vote.
Right. And I always like to tell people it was signed into law in 1868, and yet we are still here having a conversation about it. Right. It was. I think it's one of the. Sometimes I think it's not taught on purpose.
I agree.
Yeah, so that you don't know. You know, you can't fight what you don't know, right? You can't question what you didn't have an idea existed, right?
We tell the story very often here that when Reagan came to power, one of the very first appointments he made was Bill Bennett as Secretary of Education. The same Bill Bennett that said out loud, by the way, that if you wanted to eliminate crime, you would abort every black baby. Said that right live on TV, by the way. Made him head of the Department of Education, and the first thing that he mandated was the end of a civics education. It's very difficult to complain about how your government runs when you don't have an effing clue how it runs. You become this is going to sound dystopian or almost science fiction-y, but you become more like a drone. You become more compliant. You become
Yeah,
more
you become like
under.
sheep
Yeah,
being led to
thank you.
slaughter.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
do.
you have to, one thing that also came out of Reagan administration is the Nation at Risk report, which, you know, was like, we're never going to compete and we're going to be losers and Russia's beating us to the space program, blah, 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 all the different things. And when you really looked at the numbers, even today, from the 80s, from 1970s to now, the dropout rate has actually decreased every year exponentially on its own. It just has across demographics and ethnicities. But what it did is what people don't realize is why capitalism is such a great conversation, is a nation at risk also opened up the doors to capitalism. It became a tool for companies to say, you need some new books so you don't have to be failing. You need some new test materials so you know we can get a better GED for you. And we need some new testing. We need some new stuff. So training so teachers can be their best. So then what happened is we also saw with the Nation at Risk a change in teacher ed prep programs. It used to be the teacher ed prep programs were really like liberal arts programs. Very much you had conversations with the absence, the move from teacher normal schools to what it became in the 60s and 70s. I want to say that first. Teacher normal schools were very much like farming schools, like in Prairie View A&M, like you went to school to learn certain skills so that you can then have a better agricultural experience or education, you know, teach children, fine. 60s and 70s, even I would say 50s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, teachers ed programs became spaces where questioning happened, reflective thinking was very much encouraged, blah, blah, blah. And then the Nation at Risk came along and we started to see teacher ed programs focus on classroom management, how to like build a curriculum and lesson plans that can help students do well on standardized tests. With the passing of the Disability Act, IDA in 1970 for the classrooms, we started to see wonderful things happen for special education students that definitely had needed it years before. But what we also started seeing is a divide. When I was going to school, I went to school still during the time where you took special ed courses, even if you weren't going to be a special ed teacher. So when I came out, I kind of was like, oh, I understand what all these kids need. But now that I supervise teachers, I have to constantly like remind them, like, how are you making things in the classroom better for your students? And I have to get them out of classroom management and talk about relationship building. Your success in the classroom is about getting to know them and getting to know their families and getting to know the communities they live in. If you're not willing to do that, I just don't think you should be in the classroom, because that is a huge part of it, right? It helps you to actually fight back. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go off on a small branch here, but I would just, for those are the teachers I remember, the ones that made jokes, the ones that were funny, the ones that treated us as students, but as people and as more on the same level. We clearly were not on the same level. I never had a teacher overstep any kind of bounds by any means. We were always the students and we knew that. But when you could walk in the room, you know, give a little high five, did you guys all watch the game last night? And, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, or even if it was, you know, English class and we broke into who watched the news last night. Did you see this story? This is important. This is why it's important. You need to know why. The history teachers and professors who deliberately told me, or taught us, I should say. Well, they told me to. I was sitting there, but it's not just, you know, 1055 and 1066 and 1492 and 1776. It's not the what, it's the why. Why did these things happen? That's how we learn from history. So yeah, those relationships, and doesn't it go into, it doesn't that actually speak to the racial divide as well, because we don't have these relationships. You know, why should I only go to dinner with folks who look like me? You know, why aren't we all
But I say this story to go back to what you said before. If we actually do that in our classrooms, then we actually unteach our children about being individuals, because a classroom becomes a community when a teacher does that.
Yeah.
And the community kind of looks out for each other. I don't know if you've been in those classrooms where literally they're like, look, Johnny, you know this is not a good day for you to do any of those things. Like, stop doing it. You know what I'm saying? So you'll find that the community checks and balances each other, right? That they're not just out for grades. They're out to be a part of the community, right? And that in itself is a part of a civics education. You know, one thing I definitely remember before that stuff got canceled, you know, because I'm like in the brick right before that stuff got canceled, is, you know, that's why I love Schoolhouse Rock, because I was able to learn all the different things.
Hey, we learned how a bill becomes a law with Schoolhouse Rock. Let's be
Right.
honest. We all do. We, you know, whatever fun you want to make. And if you know, guys don't know what Schoolhouse Rock is, go to YouTube and just type it in. You'll find them all. I grew up with it. I learned from these little 3.5-minute cartoons about how a bill became a law. And it
Oh my
seems like such a basic thing, but we learned from it. Why, again, you know, Tamara is much more, dare I say, nonpartisan than me. I'm an absolute progressive. I'm a New Deal Democrat. I'm a Kennedy Democrat. You might happen to see, you know, and I'm not apologetic for it. But there's a reason why Republicans wanted to, and were very successful, by the way, at defunding PBS.
Oh, yeah.
And defunding NPR. I grew up with Sesame Street. I learned how to read from Sesame Street. In my humble little small town, which is an you know, it's certainly humbled. It's been humbled. I can tell you that it's been humbled by Reaganism and the deindustrialization of the country. But that's a whole different topic. But I was the first kindergarten student in my entire district to learn to know how to read. I walked in day one and I knew how to read. That was Sesame Street.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the electric company. I knew the entire alphabet. I knew all my numbers, all my colors, all my shapes, and like, okay, and what are we on to next? By about day 5. Right, by about day 5.
And even the fact that Sesame Street has been pushed to HBO, bless his baby heart,
Exactly.
you know, is an example of like exactly what we were like, what this is.
And I don't know how sick that makes me, or at the same time to thank HBO for not letting it disappear.
It's a both.
It's a bit of both, isn't it?
It's a either and, right?
Yeah.
Because I do know that in working in like TV, HBO, like the actors themselves may actually make a little bit more coin when it moved to HBO, right?
Yeah.
But I also know that,
which is fine, which is good.
But on the flip side, it also this idea of like what was free. Like I think about watching Mr. Rogers when I was little and going to the land of make believe and having all these different stories. Like I think about even the music, like learning about the 19th, you know, the women getting right to vote. I kind of learned that at school. I really learned that from, you know, we were suffering, for suffering. Not a woman got on no matter what age. Then the 19th Amendment struck down that reclusive rule. You know,
I remember that too. I don't want to lose this. We're going to lose you at 7, and I am heartbroken by it because I feel like we're on a good roll. No, I mean, you have things to do too. You're an important person, you're in demand, and you need to be other places. And I can appreciate that very, very much. We just hate to lose you here because we're selfish and because we want to keep you. But you have to leave us at the top of the hour. I will somehow try to stumble through the final hour and take you to 8 o'clock, but we're going to lose you at the top of the hour. So one of the big things that we, again, what we had based the way that we originally met, because we all meet in these virtual situations, although sometime Kristen and I will come to Philadelphia and we will sit and break bread together. We will break bread, the three of us, but was critical race theory. It's what it was the basis really of the Our Revolution event, and as I had explained at the top of the program, we seem to blossom from that and have quite the conversation. So I want to make sure that I want to make sure that I don't forget that critical race theory is an actual thing. It is actually taught. Can you please tell me, for the sake of dumb argument and to make a very clear, very obvious, almost duh kind of statement, can you tell me how many elementary, middle, and high schools in the entirety of the country where critical race theory is taught? Can you tell me how many? Because I can't. Can you tell me how many it's taught it?
Yeah.
Is the answer, we know what the answer is.
Yeah, it is. But
the answer is absolutely
it's zero. But I want to say
zero.
this like maybe 0.5, because those people that teach like anthropology, those individuals who teach like a really robust African American ethnic studies, like they're like we look at like those spaces in Arizona where they're learning about Chicano history, like in those pockets, and that's why it's such a like I don't want to say zero. In those pockets, the very essence of critical race theory are occurring, right? Because it is about, the lens itself is about questioning and challenging systems. And that's what those classes do for those high school students, right? So, which is why those classes were fought to have, because we also need to say that, right? These weren't classes where the school board was like, this is a good idea. Students ask for these classes to be taught. So I think it's also it's really important to put that in there a little bit, but that's it. But I do agree with you. Yes, but that's what I want to say.
Is the fervor, the hysteria surrounding critical race theory a made up hysteria?
Oh my God. I mean, it is, but it's also, what I think what's interesting though is that, so the last time we talked, it was only like maybe 9 states had passed the bill. It might have been in 25 states that were pending. Now we're at 29 states that are pending, and 11 states that it has passed. It is not
something that's already not taught.
But let's look at like what the language of the bills. So I feel like the headlines say anti-critical race theory. But when you look at the bills are actually about comfort, making students feel uncomfortable. That term is used a lot in the bills. Discomfort over the teaching of American history, discomfort over the teaching of trans laws, right? In Texas, they have gone as far to say that students can't organize. So say, for instance, you had a group like PA Youth Vote that exists here, where a bunch of high school students got together and started to do civics education amongst themselves and to educate fellow high school students so that when they turn 18, they could make a real clear decision when they registered to vote. That type of organization would be banned in a space like Texas, even though you're creating voters on both sides of the aisle, right?
You mean banned by the party that believes in small government, home rule, and local control?
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so,
how much of the critical race theory argument, how much of the hysteria, how much of this faux, fake, ridiculous outrage is about, we talked about the racial component, or sorry, I got it backward. We talked about the economic component of race. How much is the critical race theory racial component actually about the constant need to always have, and I have to say again, I'm a partisan person. I just am. Because I happen to think the position, I think history, facts, data, science all bear out the policies and positions I happen to hold are the ones that work. They're the most fair,
I agree with
and
you.
all of that. You know, I'm always we're not going to get time to get to it. Damn it. But I'm going to ask you about the New Deal one of these days because I get pushback on the New Deal. But yeah, well, New Deal wasn't too great for black people. No crap, it wasn't. But let's remember the time. Let's
Right.
remember the context of the time in which
Right.
Roosevelt was working in. And oh, by the way, there's been released documents since where Eleanor wrote Franklin and said, "You need to include women here. You need to include people
she
of
was
color."
always doing that. But I
And
mean,
he was the one that said, "No kidding, I need to." But then again, I can't pass it if I do. So do I pass this or do I push that? Which would you like me to do? And even she didn't have an answer for that. But all of that said, that's something you and I can talk about perhaps when Maurice can come back and join us, because I hate progressive kicking the hell out of the New Deal without the historical context of the New Deal. How much of the CRT faux created seem to find, it's like Republicans are digging deep in the closet and they find that raincoat that they forgot they had, from 6 months ago when they moved to 4 different times. How much of this is about the other? We seem to always need an other throughout American history. It was the British, it was the Irish, it was blacks, it was poor, it was communists, there's always an other. So how much of this argument, how much of race, the whole race argument in the first place, is about the other, is about the rich white guy coming up behind, the billionaires coming up behind the proverbial 30% of white males in the country and going, they're trying to take something from you. Guess what? They're not trying to take anything from you because you didn't have anything. The top already took it from you. They already took it from you. You don't have anything. You're not a temporarily inconvenienced billionaire. And you're not gonna be. Nobody's taking anything from you. So how much of this bloody CRT argument is about the other, them?
I mean, I would say it's mostly about that. It's also when you othering people is based upon fear. It's your fear of not having enough, right? They connect that othering to your ego. And ego and money is a very interesting relationship. Especially for those who are heads of household, it becomes this fragility, right? I mean, we saw a lot of rich people throw themselves off of buildings during the crash of 2008. It's literally a mental thing. But besides that, and not to lessen that, besides that, I would say that CRT is also very much the very states where it is pending, or the very states, I should say, where it's passed, are the states that also have voter suppression laws, the same states that have anti-vaxxing measures, the same states that have anti-masking measures, the same states that have parents crying at school board meetings so they don't want their children to think they're racist. Oh, God. It's the same, this is the same group that also has said, in the upcoming election, we're going to run on this. The problem is what they have done so well, and that machine is a very well organized thing, is what they haven't done is they actually haven't educated any of the people who hate it so much about what it is. Like if you pointed to somebody right now on Facebook who was having a raid or a Twitter rant, and you said, okay, define critical race theory for me, you will hear crickets. Like who created critical race? Who created the idea of it? Cricket. So as opposed to what we do is we have created, there has been created this fervor, once again, in something entrenched in ignorance. But it's also entrenched in people's already present fears, already present ideas of racism, and already present effects of capitalism. So it's just one more step, because what are we seeing next? We can't forget our First Nations and Native individuals. So what we're seeing now, because we're in October, is why are we not celebrating Columbus Day? That's the next thing that's about to take over the waves. In fact, it's already started.
Like the war on Christmas. The war on Christmas will be starting up again soon.
Right. So. No, why are we not? Why is it Indigenous Peoples Day? Why, we as Italians, and I always want to I love that argument because I'm like, well, Columbus wasn't Italian. He actually forfeit his Italian citizenship. You go to Italy, nobody's camping for Columbus. Nobody's going like, oh my God, he's amazing. Nobody's saying it. Nobody cares at all.
Yeah.
And so the point is, and I'm just like, God, there's so many Italians you could pick that are amazing. Why don't you just pick one of them and have a holiday? We'll be like, yay, great. But like this person's not even Italian. And you're like getting your panties in a bunch over there. So it has a lot. So we're not, and I don't want to say we're going from subject to subject. It's not like CRT, Columbus, Christmas. These are all the pockets of the same psychosis, right? It's the psychosis.
It's the distraction, isn't it? It's the shiny object.
Oh,
it's
a
shiny object.
Mass distraction at its best, right?
We talk every week here about distraction. 83% of all the new wealth created since Reagan came to power has gone to the top 1%. 100% of it since the year 2001, when George W. Bush was installed as president. All that wealth has gone to the top 1%. And we have crossed a Rubicon. We've crossed a bridge, folks, where over $1 trillion has been extracted and sent to the top since 2001. When you are a political corporation, a political entity with no platform whatsoever, none, zero, nothing, and you have to talk about things like Mexicans are coming to take your jobs. And Democrats want to steal from you. And they're the reasons why we have such huge deficits. And the Chinese are coming to invade us. And Black folk are, and CRT, and they're teaching your kids to hate themselves and so on. I was honored to be service host for we did almost 8 hours. And with a series of guests, and among I interviewed Congressman Jamie Raskin, I interviewed Senator Dick Durbin, a memorial for George Floyd, and one of the folks that I interviewed, I think it was Vince Hughes that I interviewed that day, and Chris Rabb was there too. And I have to say, this could have really gone off the rails, but I think you'll understand where I'm going. And I would swear it was Vince Hughes. It might have been Senator Haywood. Obviously, people of color, and looked at that virtually, at least video, looked them in the face and say, "What the hell do you people want?" And he did one of these, and I said, "Let me answer that for you, Senator. You don't want anything different than the rest of us. You want a job? Want to be able to provide for your family, keep a roof over your head, see a doctor, keep a working, functioning vehicle so you can get to work, have your kids have a decent education in a safe school, and maybe go on holiday every now and then." At the end of the day, Tamara, since you have to leave us, at the end of the day, after it's all broken down, all wiped away, all said and done, whether you are as white as a bone as I am, or the most melanin in your skin as you could possibly find, at the end of the day, isn't that what we finally have to, even as activists who are trying to break this racial thing down, at its most simple, perhaps, isn't that what we have to focus on? You don't want anything different than I do.
Oh yeah, but I think that I say yes, but I say yes very precautionally, because there's been generations of wealth and those opportunities taken away because of like codified racism in the law, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not.
So no. So I'm saying that we also want that. So we want that, but we also would love, I think everybody would love to have this spirit of reparations, and not just what people think reparations are, this idea of really deliberate repair, where you're going to identify and talk about and really, have these conversations in real robust ways. That is also a part. That's something that would make me do flip-flops down the street, because that, I think, is the only way we can get to the other stuff.
I'm trying to, when this minority, which is almost an ironic word, when this minority of people who have been drilled into their heads that you want to take something from them,
Mhm.
is that, and again, please tell me if I'm oversimplifying, isn't that really the bridge to them that we have to build? That at the end of the day, I'm not here to take anything from you. I just want the same thing that you already have access to. We all
Yeah,
want,
no, I think, but I
we
think
all
that's
want the same
yeah,
thing.
I think that has been said, and because you haven't done repair,
Okay.
that's why we revert back to what it is very quickly.
Well, at a minimum, at least you get my point.
Yeah,
At least
no,
you
I
understand what
mean,
I'm trying to
it's
get
the
at. I
reason
mean,
why newly freed slaves of African descent didn't just jump up and like attack or pillage the town, right? They just wanted education and jobs and have opportunity, right? And yet they were faced with some interesting things, because that is just, it's difficult to have that conversation if you don't go with the other one. But I have to actually go. People are
well, I'm just
trying
going to tell you very quickly before you do. Ashley says in the chat, I'm working while I listen. Love, in all capitals, listening to Tamara. And Jeff, you're okay too. So just take
Thank
that
you.
as you believe us. I don't have enough words for you to thank you. I do have some bad news as you exit. You are part of the family now.
Oh, thank
That
you.
means
I
we are
appreciate
going to call on you again, and we will schedule another time to have Maurice back, and we'll have you back, and we'll
That'd be
do
good.
what we were originally planning in the first place. Until then, I don't have enough thanks to give you. Off to your next meeting, you busy, busy girl, you. And I look forward to speaking with you again. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You take care of yourself.
Thanks.
That is Tamara Anderson. We are blessed with her presence here tonight. Absolutely blessed with it. Sad that she had to leave so quick. I should say so quick. I mean, she was here for 2 hours. So I probably shouldn't say, I shouldn't say so quick. But yeah, we're just lucky that she was here. This is an extremely intelligent, forceful, kind and compassionate woman who seems to doesn't seem, I mean, she understands this faux racial argument, this red herring, this shiny object, this distraction, as you heard her say, weapon of mass distraction over and over, seems to understand it from so many different levels, so many human levels, and so many academic levels, economic levels, social levels, but just gets it in every last direction. I'm blessed that she was here. We're lucky. We're very, very lucky. What a great lady. You know, this, I refer to this program a lot as a very homegrown effort, and it really is. I mean, we have no budget. Everything that I've spent on this program has come out of my pocket. We have a couple Patreon subscribers. Kristen's parents were beyond kind last Christmas to give me in fact, I still have it here. I'm going to show it to you all. I know radio folks, you don't get to see this. It's a little tin with some cash in it to spend on the program, and I haven't done it yet. Although sadly, some money sitting in a metal box is not gaining interest. I wish it was, but it's not. But everything I've spent on this program has been out of my pocket, and we still have no advertisers. We have a whopping 2 Patreon subscribers, but you as an audience have been there, and I do get the comments back that, you know, we've heard about you and we hear your program and we see it. And you know, the YouTube channel. Let me again, I don't think the entire program talked about the YouTube channel. If you missed any of today's program or any program, literally from day one, you go to the YouTube channel and you can see it there. You know, it's become a joke, kind of, especially on YouTube. And I watch a lot of YouTube because I like watching things in very small bits because I have the attention span of a child. Um, and it's always like, and like and subscribe. Well, it's become a bit of a joke, like and subscribe, like and subscribe. Well, yeah, I would love if you liked and subscribed. It would be brilliant. We could use it. I guess my greater point is this is a very homegrown effort. I wish it was the Tom Hartman program. I wish it was Randy Rhodes or the late Ed Schultz or Michelangelo Signorelli or Stephanie Miller. I wish it was any of those. We're not there yet, but we're working on it. And when great, super educated people like Tamara Anderson come to this program, it gives me hope that we will eventually get there. So that is where we are with that. And so let me just reset the program. It's 7:06 Eastern time here in the United States. To our great viewers and listeners around the globe, thank you, every single one of you. Thank you for being there. The phone line is open. Even though Tamara had to leave us, you can still call me and talk to me. 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189, 227-227-9189. We will take your comments, your questions. You can join us and be part of the program. You can ask about anything that we have already discussed, or you can open up on a whole new topic, whatever it is. We are happy to take your calls. Wherever you are on Facebook, that other side of information is the home group Facebook page. Come there, enter conversations. Well, God, join the conversation, he tried to say, and enter your comments, questions, etc., in the chat there. We will read them. Hot101.net, the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store for Android, and the TuneIn radio app. Go to the search bar and type in hot101.net, and you can tell Alexa. I love this. When Tamara said that I triggered her Alexa, I'm going to make this my goal now, is to speak really loudly into the microphone and tell the Alexas all in your backgrounds to listen to hot101.net. Hey, Alexa, listen to hot101.net. I want to see, please email me and tell me how many Alexas I've triggered. And you can start listening to hot101.net and TCP, Cultured Professional from Lancaster, on Roku, a very large Facebook gathering, and WTCP Global Internet Radio. I want to shift the conversation. Well, actually, my much prettier and much better half has finally joined the program. What are your thoughts on our conversation with Tamara?
I thought it was a great conversation.
Of course you did. I'm so cute.
You are.
No, but seriously, I feel like she has a grasp on the racial conversation, which, to even say it that way, sounds to almost minimize it somehow. But it seems to me she has a grasp on it that is very, very deep, and not just from being a woman of color herself, but with again, from an academic standpoint, from a historical standpoint, from a science standpoint, from a day-to-day living on the street standpoint, from an when I say academics, not just but being an educator herself, from a from this educational academic point of view, there's such a depth of understanding there, because this is an extremely complex subject. I mean, to just say, God, to even say that it's extremely complex understates the problem. She seems to have a grasp on it for me at a level that few people that I have talked to have.
And in a way that teachers do. I mean,
simplicity of discussion, a simplicity of explanation. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think one of the things that I loved listening to Tamara speak is talking about how complex history is and the way in which we tell our history. in the fact that she brought up people like Ida B. Wells, and the fact that
Not
many-
going for the obvious,
No.
Rosa Parks, even though great
but
lady
even,
and all
like,
that, but some figures in history that we may not normally talk about.
and the way in which history is, what you learn about history is very much dictated by who is telling it. And there's a reason that so many of those women who were at the forefront and started the civil rights movement were written out. They were written out, because of the time. It was still a male dominated world. It was man's world. And they didn't fit the narrative. And I misremembered that. Polly Murray, I wanted to correct something. Polly Murray was a woman, but she was in the LGBTQ community. She was transgender. She
Okay.
actually later in life fought for the right to have hormone treatment and was denied hormone treatment by the state. So I wanted to
You're correcting yourself.
correct that. Yeah. Well, it would be inaccurate the way in which I defined her or attempted to define her, because maybe she didn't, as a transgender person, define herself as gay. I mean, so
Got you. I just read what you typed to me
yeah.
because I trust what you tell me. That much. I trust it to that depth.
But
level.
I think it's something that, like when you guys were talking about the emotion that's pouring out these school board meetings, I think one aspect of it that we're not talking enough about is the fact that for some Americans, it's more comforting to think of history as already written and finalized. We don't have to revisit it. We don't have to rethink about it and look at it from a different perspective. They want that assurity, that comfort of knowing it's finalized, it's under glass, and it can't change. And that's not how human beings work. That's not how the world works. That's not how history works.
But I think there's two sides of history.
Yeah.
Again, this is where I know that this might almost sound like I'm agreeing, with the right wing, and there is a static part of history, and there is an as yet to be defined, I think, part of history. This thing happened on this date. That history is static. But I do think the flexible, the still moldable, dare I say, mushy part of history continues to be the why behind it. We know President Kennedy was assassinated, and we know exactly when it happened. The why it happened is still open for debate. We know the United States, declared its independence from Great Britain. There's even still different reasonings behind why that happened. A different example, I would say, something I did not know until earlier in the week, because of really into last week, with the tens of thousands of Haitian refugees flooding one particular Texas border town. I'll get into that perhaps before 8 o'clock. I'll get into that. But learning a bit of history, that after Haiti was granted, wink, 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 its independence from France, part of that independence agreement, there was actually a type of treaty signed. They had to pay France reparations for the lost revenue that the French colonials would be losing on the sugar crops. And then we wonder why Haiti is it is the poorest nation on earth, I believe, if not it's in the bottom 5 of all the 184-ish recognized nations on earth. It is usually in the bottom 3 as being the poorest on the planet.
But
and why is that?
Past that have led to
There
that
are
as well.
reasons past that, but I mean, when you have to, can you imagine, you know, when half of your GDP has to get sent to the old colonial masters who are not even on the island anymore?
Well, I think it's also important to remember that
No wonder they're broke.
the fact that the French imposed that level of reparations on Haiti has also been cited for the reason that they had, as maybe one of the contributing factors to the reasons that they had it, one of the only successful slave uprisings in the world. And then did establish a society of freedmen who were incredibly upsurgent. And I think the reaction, I would actually argue, I think Haiti's current economic state owes a greater legacy to the reaction from European colonial powers to that, to seeing a successful uprising by enslaved people who then ended that system and then tried to create something beautiful out of it. And that had to be crushed.
Yeah. That's why it's amazing to me. Maybe it shouldn't be. I understanding history as much as I do, and I'm not a history professor, a history expert. I don't you know, supposed to pass myself off as one by any means, but I do study it. I continue to study it. I believe so many of, if not all, of the things that the ills that weigh on us can be solved just by looking back at our own history. It's why I'm such a proponent of the New Deal and things like the space program and the Peace Corps and the Great Society, because the answers to our problems, our past problems, are in our own history. They're right there. We need only the courage to reinstitute them. Progressive ideals who have been labeled as progressive, as somehow new, falling out of the sky, coming from Mars, this brand new way of looking at things. No, it's not brand new. We've done this before. Mr. Reagan said one of the reasons he wanted to become president was to destroy anything that was left of the New Deal, because heaven forbid the middle class would continue to grow any economic and or political power. Heaven forbid. Remember the Powell memo. Rich people have to get involved in the political process. Start contributing large sums of money to universities and colleges so that you can help dictate what they teach. The middle class continues to grow. They're growing in economic power. That means they're growing in political power, and we can't have that. I know Republicans listen. I know you do, because I get the feedback. I know you do. I know you know who I am, and I know you listen to the program, and I know you listen to what I'm preaching here. I posted an article earlier this week that there are roughly, and I'm surprised by the way that the number is this small, there are 500,000 people in urban areas in this country. I'm not even talking about the potentially millions of people throughout the South and Appalachia who have lost power and running water in their homes because they can't afford it anymore. When do you folks start to realize that the 660 billionaires in this country, the couple of hundreds of millionaires, not that there are hundreds of them, but people who have 100, less than a billion, and the largest corporations do not represent you. They do not care about you. You are cheap labor. You are cannon fodder. You are cogs in a machine. You are a profit center. And when you don't make them money anymore, die. It's fine. We'll make more. The same party that is claiming to you to be so hair on fire, up in arms about the immigration process, while it encourages and allows corporations to send their jobs overseas and advertise in Spanish in newspapers throughout Central, South America, and Mexico. Come on over the border. We'll give you a job. You'll never unionize. You won't even make the minimum wage because technically you're, wink, 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 illegal. But come on in. We have work for you. The same supposed political party that says, no, 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 you should control. Your local school board who should control what happens in your schools. Your town knows what's best for you. You live there. But oh, by the way, you can't pass laws about this and this and this and this and this and this. The one who doesn't want government in the bedroom, but gay couples, no, you can't adopt, you can't get married, and oh, women, you can't have any control over your own bodies. This is money and power.
But
This is not about your welfare. They don't care about you. Enough of this. And then I'm going to get into, maybe in a couple of minutes, the lies that were hung on my door this week. And I hope you three lot are listening too. And I hope if you're not listening, I hope it gets to you. And one of you is listening because I can see you. Let's get into the lies that ended up on my door this week. Because you want power and you want the money that comes with it. And you don't give a flying you know what about any of the ones that you're trying to put your thumb on top of. Because you enjoy the power and the money it brings you.
But again,
and to hell with the rest of us.
I think this is where Democrats and progressives have made a massive mistake. They should have learned from what the Republican Party did. The Republican Party didn't first go after the Democratic Party.
They went after the unions and defunded the Democratic Party.
But think about what they were doing. They were going after a non-political actor. They were going after an actor that people didn't initially associate with a political party. They demonized unions. They demonized college students and hippies. They demonized immigrants. We start going at the party and we don't go at these rich businessmen. How many times do you turn on the TV and see somebody turning out to protest Peter Thiel? That's what I want to see. I want to see a progressive group show up to protest these guys. I want to see them show up to protest Jeff Bezos and Amazon. These guys get to hide behind a political pack while we have a fight about my party's better than your party. And if I come up to a voter who leans conservative or is conservative and start going after about how evil Republicans are, all they're going to hear is you're attacking my party, you're attacking me.
These people aren't part of the party, though. They don't even realize it.
They are
If
part
I
of the
go
party
through
in their mind.
But if I go through a progressive platform, they agree with all of it. So what are they really a part of?
The party has
The party that's
protected-
supposedly going to protect their guns, but at the same
Yes.
time will be the first one to take them away if they ever rose up.
the party is protecting their vision of what they think America should be.
Republican parties doesn't have a vision of what they think America should be. They have 660 billionaires and the 500 largest corporations on the planet
They do, but
who
if I
want
come up
all
to
the
a-
money and all the power. It's
if
not a
you wanna-
platform. Republicans didn't even pass a platform in 2020.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Jeff.
There is no platform.
You're thinking about this argument as a Democrat.
Logically, heaven forbid,
That's not
and
how these
from an
voters think.
educated standpoint.
These voters
How
are
dare I.
voting on identity and emotion. If you come up and you start attacking the party, they're just going to shut down on you. You're attacking me. That's all they're going to hear. You're attacking me. You're attacking my culture.
Well, good. Let's talk about lies then. Let's switch and talk about lies. Let's talk about truth, facts, science, data, and lies. We live in a condo complex here. I'm not giving you the address. Although some of you that I'm about to rip and tell the truth about, you know where I live anyway. And we're not supposed to have any soliciting here. We're not supposed to have any political activity here. But yet today I was greeted with a package of door hangers, and yesterday we got a package of door hangers. And the Republican door hangers came yesterday. The Democratic door hangers came today. And I will read them, you know, looking at them and comparing them. Probably not all of them. And this is where I'm not gonna kid you. I could probably bore you to tears. You know, going through this, and you're going to ask yourself, you know, what does one local township's council race have to do with me in Oregon, Arizona, Nebraska? What does it have to do with me in New Zealand or Australia or across the Western European continent, Central and South America, where Hot 101 listeners reside? Well, I guess it's a difficult argument to make because to a point, how does it affect you? It doesn't. Whatever ordinances are passed here in Lower Saucon Township don't affect you in Brazil. Let's just be blunt. But the nature of the politics does. Because it's funny because we were talking about this morning, and then lo and behold, someone shows up on camera, and Jonathan Capehart does a story about Tucker Carlson visiting what is now the fascist country, full-blown fascist Hungary, and did 3 days of shows from there, coming to the conclusion that we could use a little more of this in the United States.
Yeah.
So these things that are happening around the globe and the things that are happening here in the United States, remember, it's Lincoln that said we would never be conquered by an outside opposing force, but we can and probably will tear ourselves down from the inside. And we're doing it again. And we're doing it because the former political party known as Republicans there is nothing. There's nothing there. Be afraid, be angry, hide. Don't let them take your guns. They're trying to kill your babies. They want your kids to think they're all racist. Run, hide, hair on fire. Brown people are coming for you. All the while, this tiny group of people continues to steal from you. Steal and extract from you. Because they think you're too stupid to know it. I challenge Republicans in the way, or self-identified Republicans in the way that I do, because for exactly the opposite reason, because I think you're better than that. I think you're smarter than that. Full agreement with me is probably never going to happen, but at least wake up and realize what's happening to you, because you're smarter than this. You are smarter than this. You're better than this. You know something's wrong. You do know something's wrong. You think you're voting for a solution, but you're not. You're perpetuating the problem. So let's talk about this flyer I received from one of the incumbent council people who I've spoken with directly, looked him dead in the eye, shook hands with, and as he cowered as I spoke to him, broke into a sweat, and then of course threatened to sue me because it's all he knows how to do. 7:30 Eastern time here, the Kennedy Effect live for October 3rd. That Other Side of Information on Facebook, hot101.net, Apple App Store, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio app, WTCP on Global Internet Radio, TCP Roku channel, and their large and wonderful Facebook following. That is how you find us. thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. I suspect one of these candidates will probably be emailing me at some point, threatening to sue me yet again. You can tweet me at @thatkennedytalk. Instagram, That Other Side of Information, and of course the YouTube channel, That Other Side of Information. If you want to support the program, patreon.com/That Other Side of Information. And the phone line is open, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. We encourage you very, very much to call us and be part of the program. So here's the flyer we received. I give it quick little, this is from the Republican slate of our local township council, our municipal candidates. And, very antiseptic pictures of everyone, textbook American families. And on the back, the front is a vote for us. It's actually shiny. It's very well made, very nice. Their website is here. And on the back is a supposed, what I imagine would be a platform, so to speak, except that what's in it, as I read it, and my experience of what I've lived with in this township for over 5.5 years now, appears to mostly be a lie. So let's have a look. And simply because this is happening again in my local municipality, it's happening to you too. It is. This is why these local elections mean so much. Obviously, when legislation is passed in Washington, it affects you. As a resident, a living, breathing human being in the United States, what happens in Washington affects you. Obviously. As a living and breathing human being in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, what happens in Harrisburg affects you. We sometimes think about just how much your county and local municipal governments affect you. So, and by the way, my goal for the next 2 weeks, 3 and 7, is 10, the 10th and 17th, 10th, 17th, and 24th actually are wide open programs. They are currently I think they're currently unscheduled. Oh, geez. I shouldn't say that until I know. I think they're unscheduled, sadly. Oh, God. Okay, so we know what's new at notes. Thank you. Yes, they are currently unscheduled. We are going to try to focus on local elections anywhere in the country. We're going to try to focus on local elections as much as humanly possible. So let's have a look at this flyer. Tax reduction and elimination of council pay. Well, who the hell wants to pay high taxes? Nobody does. But let's remind and educate folks on where this tax cut came from. Here in our local municipality, we have a landfill. It's pretty damn big. That landfill pays property tax. Previous councils, bipartisan councils, set aside millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, planning for the eventuality that the landfill would close because it had maximized its size. Landfill has been lobbying for, as I understand it, well before I ever moved back here. Well, I shouldn't say back here because I never actually lived in Lower Saucon before, but back to the Lehigh Valley. Long before I ever moved here, to grow and to continue, to conveniently skirt as many regulations as we could because those are expensive. And bipartisan councils up to 2019 said, maybe you will, maybe you won't. The Republicans were a little more flexible and said, we're not necessarily going to grant you growth, but at least we'll listen. Most of the Democrats in the past said, enough. It's huge. It stinks. God knows what's leaking out of it. Then the landfill company dropped about $50,000 into a local municipal race a few years back. And if you're running a local municipal race, which you can usually finance out of your own pocket, 50 grand's a hell of a lot of money. Republicans take control of the council through some interesting shenanigans. Lo and behold, grant an extension, expansion of the landfill. Landfill is basically unchecked at this point. All of the money that was set aside, if you want to call it a rainy day fund, I guess you could. Granted, it was larger than your typical rainy day fund. We were to just empty that out, return that to the people in a form of a quote unquote tax reduction. So now none of that money exists anymore. Somehow that's sound fiscal management. Do you have a savings account? Do you have a personal savings account? 40% of the people in this country can't afford a $400 emergency. 60% of the people can't afford a $1,000 emergency. Lower Saucon Township is now part of that 60% because we gave all the money back. And we also know that property taxes are proportional to an extent. Even though the rate is the same for everybody, if you have $1 million house, you pay a hell of a lot more. So who do you think got more money back? Nobody wants to pay more taxes than they owe. No one wants to pay high taxes. Taxes are the cost of living in a civil society. That's how you pay for everything. Schools, roads, libraries, water systems, electrical systems, everything. Snow plowing, leaf collection. It's called the commons. But we gave all that money back. We're the great tax cutters. We're fiscally responsible. If a major disaster hit this township now, a tree falls through town hall, there's a gas leak and it explodes. One of the myriad of gas pipelines that are all running under our feet explode. This township has no capacity, no financial capacity whatsoever to deal with it.
Well,
That's fiscal responsibility. So there's 2 lies right here in front of me, printed on my door hanger.
you just hit on something that to me is the biggest problem in American politics right now. We can talk about our parties, but fundamentally at the end of the day, we have to look in the mirror and say as voters, we have to do better. Because why did they do stuff like this? They do stuff like this because they want to get reelected. And if something happens and the township has to raise taxes dramatically, let's say the bridge collapses and they have no choice, but they have to repair the bridge now. People are going to show up at a council meeting with their hair on fire and be furious at the council. Why didn't you plan for this? Why didn't you have money set aside for this? If voters were better informed, better educated, and watching and paying attention, we would do better. We would have a better government. My home county, where I grew up, has a real problem with its sewage water treatment system. That water treatment system was not meant, when it was built decades ago, to be supporting almost 6,000 people just within the borough. They've been debating for almost 3 years now about building a new treatment plant. Hasn't happened because nobody wants to take the vote to spend the money and raise taxes to be able to build it. But if that thing goes down, from what we were told, the only option the plant will have will be to just dump raw sewage, and it's going to dump it right into the river where everybody fishes, where they go kayaking, where their kids play, and it's going to go downstream to Harrisburg, and it's going to go downstream to the Chesapeake, and then we're going to get sued. And imagine how much they're going to have to raise our taxes when we get sued. But nobody's thinking about tomorrow. Everybody wants their money now. You know, so it's not just the thing I find myself more frustrated with more and more is it's not just, yes, everything you said about people being able to buy politicians, being able to buy elections, totally all true. Where's the major protest to fix that? Where's the major protest to say we need campaign finance? This is ridiculous. You shouldn't be able to dump 50 grand into a campaign and buy a council.
That's what the Powell memo got us. That's what Bellotti got us. That's what
But it's what laziness got us
it's what
too.
the Citizens United decision brought us.
Yeah.
It's and no, I don't think enough people know it. I don't think enough people. I have made this. I am not a constitutional scholar, not by a long freaking way. Let me guarantee you. But I have explained this to you folks repeatedly on this. George has the, there you go. George has the bingo card up. Citizens United, check that off. Check that off. What else did I do? 40 years of Reaganism, we did that. Destruction of unions, got that. Didn't do the wealth doctrine yet. We have done this before, did that. Our Revolution PA did that. Our media network did that. Green New Deal didn't get to. Top 1% we did.
You did
Myth of
that.
Trickle Down we did. Didn't do Cokes. President Kennedy I did. Social didn't do that one. Become Patreon subscriber. We did do that one.
Yep.
Right wing hate media.
You did that
Not
one.
quite.
Yeah, you did.
Not as much. Voter suppression. We did. Citizens United. Hypocrisy. We got all that. Oh God, you got a bingo on your card by now, folks. Please, you got
Do
a
you
bingo
want
on
your
your card.
phone calls?
But listen, I do want your phone calls. I still want your phone calls. Look at you, learned how to learn to look in the camera and stuff. Look at me. I know it's
Well,
hard. It's hard not to look at me.
it's hard.
I'm glowing. Well, I'm quite literally glowing because I'm translucent. But I don't think enough folks literally understand, like properly, deeply understand what Citizens United said. And to break it down to its most basic, and I'm oversimplifying it. I think I don't know that you can.
It's
I
very
mean, I can't read
complicated.
it is complicated, but at its most base, Citizens United says that money equals free speech.
Yes.
Period. And that
But-
corporations have a type of personhood and people have the right to free speech. Now, by the way, when the coal company allows the coal ash pit to spill into a water supply and it kills people, we tend to not arrest that corporation or try them for murder. Isn't that funny?
Well, they're special people.
Well, they're special. That's for damn sure. You
But-
swallow enough lead, you become a special person. That's for damn sure.
I think
Let's get into this, though. We've broken this down on the program repeatedly. How can money be speech when it is not equally distributed? According to the Constitution, we all have the right to free speech. And the only limitations on that are, again, the overused examples of you can't scream fire in a crowded theater because it's dangerous. And, you know, believe it or not, I know this sounds going to get a little, everybody's going to get a little giggly. There are restrictions on pornography. There's restrictions on cigarette advertisings and so on and so on. There are limitations to free speech, but we all have it. And supposedly we all have it equally, but you cannot have it equally. If you are going to equate money with speech, then it cannot be equal because money is not equally distributed. That
I don't even
means
think you have to go that far. I mean, because if you, in the decision, Robert's writing the majority opinion says, it's, look, the Constitution doesn't say that money is speech, but it also doesn't say that money
They do
can't be
say-
speech.
it says money equals speech.
It does, but he says in the opinion also, if the American public doesn't want money to be flooded into elections, doesn't think that money should equal speech, then the Congress should pass a law and
But
ban
it's
it.
not Supreme Court's job to suggest legislation to the
But that's what the
legislative
originalists do.
branch. That's supposedly, isn't that supposedly what conservatives always scream about how they don't want an activist court? The,
Well,
the
that's what
court's job is
originalists
not.
always do is say, well, it's like Scalia saying, you know, that the Constitution doesn't mandate sexism, but it doesn't prohibit it. And, you know, but at the same time, he goes out there and says, I wouldn't support an ERA, you know, so it's what originalists do all the time. And it's, So that's just my point. Like, I don't even think we need to get into this debate about it not being equal. Roberts says in the opinion, if you don't want this to happen, then Congress pass a law. Let's just get out there, meet the pavement, and make them pass a law.
Let me knock down another one of these things in here real quick. Unwavering support for the police, fire services, and township personnel. One of the council people running for re-election here was one of the chief organizers of a pro-Second Amendment gun rally here. The application for which was rammed through by threat and intimidation.
When you say threat and intimidation, you mean the police or?
No. My understanding of how this quote unquote permit process went through is, I'm putting in this permit, you're going to approve it.
So actually threatening the borough.
You're going to approve it, right? You know what I'm talking about. The permit was filled out for an audience of 100 people. It was way beyond that. It was told that the permit outlined how police protection would not be necessary. They had to be called. Media were physically threatened and removed from this, even though it was an open public event. The park was not cleaned up afterwards. There was a sizable monetary damage to the park. Vehicles were supposed to be prohibited from being in the park. They were driven through the park. Protecting the police, you drew them into an armed event somewhere where they supposedly weren't going to be needed. Support for fire services, you threatened the merger of several fire departments. Now, I know that's been in the plans for quite a while. And I can easily agree with you. Listen to what I'm saying. I could easily agree with you that this process was taking too long. But you've threatened them to force it to happen and held money over their heads or held money from them to force it to happen, rather than allowing the process to either carry through or sitting as an arbiter and trying to encourage the process. It's another lie. Careful open space planning. One of the gentlemen running for re-election on our local town council is an attorney for his family business who are developers. He has stood and represented that company in what have been, if not legal, at least in appearance sakes, conflicts of interest. It's hard to protect open space when you build on it because it's profitable. Strategic community development. The slate of candidates hasn't identified an inch of this town that they don't want to build on yet because it's profitable. When you're a developer, you make money by building. It's hard not to build, or it's hard to build if you don't have open space to build on. So you take the open space and you build on it, and it's profitable. Improvement in township operations. I've not heard a damn thing that would justify that from folks working in town, in the township, I should say. This slate has ruled with fear and intimidation, just like the national Republicans, just like the state Republicans, just like the county Republicans. That's why these local elections matter. You need to vote. Posted an article today at that other side of information, 44%. I suspect the real number is higher. But of the people who were bold enough, brave enough to actually answer the questionnaire, 44% of all of the public school principals in the entirety of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania admitted they had been threatened during this time of faux outrage about masking and vaccinations and CRT. They report being followed, phone calls, emails, physical threats, life threats, their family being followed, harassed in public. There is a mass exodus of local election officials everywhere in the country. And the people stepping into the breach, well, let's just say they don't exactly believe in elections. Where does that leave our electoral system? There are very, very dangerous things happening in this country.
Yes. And I would also make the argument to maybe those conservative voters who would be motivated to vote for one of these individuals based on CRT. Be careful what you wish for, because these might also be people who are just profoundly unqualified. They may do something that is illegal. They may do something that wastes your money. We had, my parents are both retired teachers. The school district where they taught, there were actually two high schools. And shortly before my mom retired, there was a plan to merge the two high schools into one high school because the smaller of the two could no longer financially support itself with its tax base. It was a town where most people were seniors. And people got very upset about this, you know, the whole rah, 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 I graduated from, you know, such and such high school.
I was gonna
now.
say such and such.
Yeah, you're not taking my high school away. They voted people onto the board who wasted almost $2 million of the taxpayers' money. And when a school district makes a blunder like that, you don't just go back to the people that you contracted with and go, whoops, sorry, we made a mistake, you know, please let us off the hook. No, you had to pay the $2 million, which meant the taxpayers had to pay $2 million.
What about the Fulton County here in PA?
Yeah.
Who agreed to turn their election equipment over to the fake, ridiculous, you know, faux outrage, they're stealing from you, they're taking turn their election equipment over to the Republican so-called election audit. That, by the way, broke the law, for which no one has been prosecuted yet. I have no idea why. Again, I'll say it straight out. It's an absolute failure of the Commonwealth Department of State and the Department of Justice, by the way, because it's a blatant, open violation of both Commonwealth and federal law. But once the machines were taken out of what's called the chain of custody of qualified, certified, and elected government officials, those machines could no longer be used. And now Fulton County is going to have to spend, I think it's upwards of $4 million to replace all of their election equipment and reestablish a secure chain of custody.
And the state has already said, you're funding the money on your own.
The state's told them to go screw themselves and you find the money. You did it, you do it. Ashley mentions in the chat, we always jump on your comments, and it doesn't, I'm a little shocked, by the way, somebody hasn't called, because I know they're listening, and I'm a little surprised I'm not being challenged here. And there's nothing you can challenge because I'm right, but that's beside the point. That said, let me just say, Ashley says in the chat, our school was evacuated when a supervisor from another township decided to enter the school with his mob of friends after the school board announced the meeting moved to a virtual status. I added the extra word there.
Wait, would Ashley call in? These people came into the school.
Would Ashley call in? I've been trying to get Ashley to call in for months. And so is
Call in,
Ryan.
Ashley.
Ashley didn't even call when Ryan was on the program.
Because now I want to hear this story. They entered the school during the school day.
I can't glean that from her comment. I would be speculating.
Because if they
Our
did
school
that,
was
oh my
evacuated.
word.
I'll read the school was evacuated when a supervisor from another township decided to enter the school with a mob of friends after the school board announced its meeting would be moved from in-person to virtual.
Wow.
Shamim, who is actually on the school board here in the Saucon Valley. Very glad that you're watching, Shamim. I know we disagree on some things. We have a very polite, cordial relationship. I'd consider ourselves friends, but we do disagree on some things. Mentions that money corrupts politics if one side has a muzzle on and the other has a megaphone. I would agree. Money does corrupt politics. In fact, too many people have entered politics for the sake of making money. And by the way, yes, one side, especially in this Saucon Valley, does have a megaphone. And the other one does have a muzzle. And that's based on money and power too. And what's happened, the way that, schools are not being too terribly run different. And I've been told board meetings are not being run. And the way things are happening in the background, not too terribly different than the utter collapse and dissension, or dissension, not disagreement, dissension of how Lower Saucon Township is being run, has descended into authoritarianism. And that might sound like a hyperbolic word of what's happened to our township, but it's the absolute truth. They have destroyed you. Public comment is limited now to. It's funny when one of the people running for re-election loved the open public comment section of Lower Saucon Township public meetings, often talking for double-digit minutes at a time. Once his ass was sitting at the dais, now it's 3 minutes. And oh, by the way, we don't have to answer a damn thing you ask us, especially if we don't like it. And if you tell the truth about us in public, we might just threaten to sue you. So I'm waiting for my lawsuit to come.
You just read, that's another good point, because when people say to me, oh, what we really need, the biggest thing we need to fix politics is we need term limits. I'm like, that's not it. Because if you have a term limit and I'm only in for office for 2 years and I can take as much cash as I want.
Well, I can make an argument for term limits.
Term
but
limits doesn't make me talk to my constituents or do constituent services or stop taking money from donors.
267-227-9189, 267-227-9189, approaching the top of the hour. If it's funny because the comments have seemed to have picked up quite a bit. If they continue, we will stay with you. If the phone rings, we will stay with you, but we'll probably be ending up somewhere in the 8:15 area. We'll see how it continues to go. Ashley's kind enough to put in the chat, I told you she wasn't going to call. Ashley doesn't make phone calls. No, it was 7 p.m. There was band practice and other extracurriculars happening, and apparently they kind of just stormed the building in the midst of these extracurriculars. I can only imagine, when I don't want to, this kind of takes the argument off into a very small branch of the creek that I probably shouldn't go down.
Illegal trespassing. There's
safety in schools.
Yeah.
Safety is a good guy with a gun is going to stop a bad guy with a gun. But there's a security officer armed at that and sees 20 guys, and sees Steve Lynch's 20 guys coming toward the school and just decides to start opening fire. Are you kidding me?
Well, there's
what the hell? I'm telling you what. I will say this now, and lots of people will disagree. The topic of, or the discussion of, or at least the question of, is this country going to descend into another civil war? You're in it. You're in one. You are in one now. One party, public officials from that party have said in public, in this Commonwealth and throughout the country, that us, simply because we are registered Democrats, should be shot. Shot, dead.
The only quibble I was,
You're in a civil war. It's just the major gunfire hasn't started yet. You're in it.
my quibble with this one.
I know your quibble.
These are the same people who love the narrative of the lost cause. That's what they want. They want us to start talking about a civil war. Don't give them the dignity of being martyrs.
That's
and
different.
Soldiers.
No,
They're criminals.
that's different. That's different. I'm not talking about a lost cause because it's not a lost cause. And it wasn't a lost cause in the 1860s. I'm not talking about it as a lost cause. I'm talking about wake the hell up. You're in it. You're in it now.
But words
And the
matter.
only way, I don't care. I think I'm right. You can tell me that you think I'm wrong, and that's great. And you can especially, and I'll listen to you because you live here and I fear you tremendously. But these are not, I'm too bad. It's not hyperbole. It is where we are. The major shooting just hasn't started yet. But I don't believe that we have to descend into that. It's exactly why I continue to preach, dare I say, every single week. It's the economic arguments. It's the economic discussions that we can have with the folks that have 27 flags on the back of their truck and a don't tread on me and all that crap, because they have to feed a family too. Their kids are going to public school too. They're not different from us. We are not different. People who look like Tamara don't want anything different. I know she didn't exactly understand with my point of view, or maybe I didn't make it enough understandable. We don't want different things. The people who, believe it or not, I believe this in my heart. The people who marched through Charlottesville 5 years ago with tiki torches, which still I think is hilarious, they still at the most baseline, they want the same things that we do. Safe streets, a roof over their head, a public school they can trust and count on that doesn't have lead pipes and asbestos and actual textbooks that are up to date, or even, God forbid, a tablet, a job, maybe the ability to take a week's vacation or two each year. And they can see and afford to see a doctor. They want the same things we do.
But I think this and that actually that conversation was one of my favorite parts of your discussion with Tamara, because I think it gets to the problem here. If you talk to most of those, people that I know at home who are conservative, who were so upset by the Black Lives Matter protests, it's not that they don't like Black people, or they don't like people of color, or they think that racism and prejudice is okay. It's that they think it's ended. They think it's over. And we're taking one or two bad apples, you get people who would say things to me.
Are you talking about John Roberts? We can gut the Voting Rights Act because racism's over because we had a Black president?
Yeah. You get one or two, you get people who say stuff to you like, I don't agree with what Derek Chauvin did, and that bad video is awful, but they're breaking windows, they're looting businesses, they're taking this one case and they're blowing it out of proportion. And it's exactly what James Baldwin so eloquently talked about that wall between Black and white America. Where he said in an interview famously, I don't have anything against most white people, and I don't think most white people have anything really against Black people. Is that they have no idea what's happening on the other side of the wall because they don't want to know. And that, I think, is what we're fighting. I mean, did you learn about redlining when you went through school?
Oh, goodness, no.
I didn't learn about redlining.
No, but we did a hell of a lot more education on the 14th Amendment, on the Civil War, and a truthful, I think, what I believe to be. Others would disagree, and that's okay. It's a free country. We can disagree. I happen to believe I'm correct, but it doesn't mean we can't disagree and have a discussion about it and learn from each other. But what I feel was a truthful look at the events of the 1860s and everything leading up to it. And actually, Tamara was very, very, very correct in mentioning Andrew Jackson, where I think the real deep divides in this country really started to be exposed, was actually all the way back to Andrew Jackson. We don't think about 1815, and in that era, the several the years of his administrations, because he was elected twice. Yes. We don't think about his 8 years as a direct correlation to 1861 to 65. I believe that it was. I believe that it was.
There absolutely is, and you have the Great Awakening at the same time, which brings about, some very wonderful, trends in the country. Some people within that movement go on, to be a part of the abolition movement, but you also get a very reactionary form of Christianity that sees this country as the province of, white men. And, maybe that even goes back a little bit. I mean, you really could say Monroe and the Monroe Doctrine.
And Manifest Destiny too.
Yeah,
I think Manifest Destiny was
but we don't
not extended. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to think if I'm using the right word, and sometimes I get over analytical. Extended to our dominion over folks that don't look like us. That's just all part of Manifest Destiny. It's
But even the founders, like Ben Franklin was, I'm a history nerd. My dad's a retired history teacher. And I would say, as a side note to the discussion about civics, I don't think at least in the state of Pennsylvania, civics is required as part of the curriculum. And I do think we do a good job of teaching civics, at least, within my knowledge base and exposure and my dad's experience in the profession. What I think is lacking, and what I would hear my parents talk about all the time and other educators talk about, critical thinking. Critical thinking skills is what is lacking.
You know what? I'm cutting you off. Sorry, Mika.
No, well, it's
what you're saying is important, Mika, and you need to be heard. But now listen to me. No, I'm just kidding. It's a morning Joe thing that we kid about.
But I would hear it from professors too in college.
I want to.
The same thing.
Let me just give me a chance here. This is a discussion you and I had. And I'm wondering for the folks that are listening, and if you decide to chime in, that'd be awesome. Or if it makes you think about this as you watch the recording of the program. You and I had a discussion about proofs. Remember, in geometry, about proofs. Prove to me that the angle of this triangle is,
which is gone now.
Here's the beginning, here's the end, fill in the middle. And if you don't remember what proofs are, I would love to. I really wish somebody would chime and tell me if they remember proofs. It was a T, right? And you're the opening statement, and then you had a postulate over here, and you filled in the blanks. But I think the beauty of proofs is you have to if you were doing a proof and you wanted to hand it into the teacher to be graded, whether you got the proof right or not was not necessarily whether you proved what you had to prove, but how you did it. You had to have all the steps in there, and you couldn't skip steps. And it was a logical thinking educational exercise. It was, you need to get from A to Z, but how do you get there? And you have to get there by each individual step. A equals B, B equals C, C equals A, but what does D equal? I'm proving that D equals, but how did you get there? And it's that level, I'm telling you, that I credit that perhaps more than anything in my day-to-day job on this show of how I try to go, how do I go from A to Z? Or how do I know that my endpoint has to be this, especially in a professional or work or career point of view? My goal is I have to get this thing finished, where this task, whatever that task is, I have to get that done. What are the steps I need to do to get that done? I take it back to geometry and proofs. It's critical thinking. It's thinking by step. It's working smart, not hard. I'm going to push that boulder uphill. Well, why don't you stop for 5 seconds? I got a better idea. Break the rock into smaller rocks, use a rope, drag it with it's the critical thinking. It's the stop, the step back, the macro view, get the steps in order, and achieve what you have to achieve. I don't think we teach that anymore. I think you're 100% correct.
I think the other part of critical thinking that was great about proofs is, I don't know if you did this at your school, but we would do the proofs and there would be, sometimes multiple ways to answer the proof correctly. And you would trade with your partner and you would see how they answered the proof. And that started to teach us that there are multiple ways to get the right answer. There are multiple ways to look at an issue. And then when I got to college as an English major, which I will always be proud of, I know that, there's kind of been a push to downplay the value of a fine arts arts and sciences education or the fine arts. But I think it's incredibly important because it was there as an English major that my professors started to look at me and say, okay, that's what you think that poem means? Now look at it from a different angle and argue against that. And to argue against your own viewpoint. A lot of us are in information silos where we only encounter our perspective. We only encounter people who think the way that we do. We have an inability to occupy another headspace or argument.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding self-congratulatory, I do it on this program all the time. You will hear me take a position and stop in the middle of a sentence and go, well, I can understand why you would argue that point of view, but I do think that's a lost art. But it's not just a lost art, though. It's an art that's being, dare I say, deliberately lost on the right. Nothing we say has merit. Even when we bloody well know it does. Well, nothing that progressives have to say is true. It's not good for you. It doesn't have Joe Biden could cure cancer tomorrow.
Well, look at
I know it's a stupid example. He literally could have a glowing hand given by God and touch people and cure them of cancer, and the right would still demonize it. This is the tactic. This is when you have no platform, when you have no policy, no leadership, no guidance, no political party, a corporation. It's a demonization. Everything we say is wrong.
But I think that we have to take outside of the political parties, because that happened even when the Republican Party still had a platform. At the time that I was in college was the time where our university, our debate team, was in the same debate league, I think it was called, with like Harvard and Yale, and Liberty University was in there. And yes. Liberty University was kicked out because they started telling their students, if you lose the argument, if you start losing the substance of the argument, just get louder and faster and just shout your opponent down. And they literally were coaching their students to break the rules of debate. And so it's not just a political party argument, it's a societal argument. As a society across the political spectrum, we need to detach this from party identity and say this type of behavior is just un-American. It's un-American.
But again, I think we're saying the same thing in different ways. Yeah. But that is okay. So it is I get all that. It is un-American. I get all that. And I agree. I agree with everything that you just said, but this is the tactic. It's about proving. You're proving my point, which you live here. I know you don't like proving my points. I really know you don't like proving my points, but you are proving my point. It's a tactic. It's what the right and those who identify with it, sadly, even though they don't agree with any of it. I mean, you can't ask a Republican what the Republican platform is. They can't tell you because there isn't one. But it's the tactic of it's what was left of this functioning political party is descended into, and not dissension, but descending, sunken down into the quicksand of. It's throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails and fear this and be scared of that. And look at the presidential debate when Joe Biden says we're not going to raise taxes on people, and the other fool at the other podium is screaming over top of him.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
It's to end all of that. It's mud against the wall and distraction. And my God, your house is on fire even when it's not. This is a tactic. It's a planned.
It is absolutely a tactic. My caution to what you were saying is that, okay, I come from the comms space. That's what I do professionally every day. And one of the core tenets that one of my heroes follows, Anat Shankar Acharya, is never speak in hyperbole. Never speak in hyperbole, never speak in absolutes, because the second that you do, the persuadables in the middle will tune you out and ignore you. They won't take you seriously.
But then why is it so successful for the right? Because it's exactly what they do.
But they're not speaking to the persuadables in the middle. They're starting to lose the persuadables in the middle because they're doing that. So my caution is simply this. You're right. It is a tactic of the Republican Party and of the far right, but we need to qualify that. We need to say these extreme individuals are doing X, but linking it to the entire Republican Party is going to turn off a large percentage of Republican voters who say, well, you're another angry Democrat attacking the Republican Party.
How do you not attack what you see right in front of you?
I'm not saying you not go at the behavior you see in front of you, but hammering initially out of the gate with these persuadable voters that their party is evil doesn't draw them closer to you. It pushes them further away. If you make it, as one of our friends, Amanda Waldman, does, if you make it about, hey, I don't like this. You're upset about you getting taxed and Jeff Bezos paying nothing. I don't like that either. All of her beginning conversations focus on the issue and they eschew party. She doesn't mention it. Now, she doesn't hide the fact that she's a Democrat either. She comes right out and tells them she's a Democrat. But she tries to front load talking about the issues, not coming at them and attacking their party. If you come at it and attack, if somebody came up to you as a Republican and started telling you right at the bat how evil the Democratic Party is, what's your reaction? You dig in.
General reaction is I know better.
You dig in,
and I think some of these folks should know better too. It's a funny thing. I've been accused of this before. And it's a discussion that you and I have had. It's a discussion that we've had thrown at us by the folks on the right, people that are friends of us who are on the right. And I do have friends who are on the right. That you think we're all stupid. No, that's exactly the point. I don't think you're stupid. I really don't. I think you're smarter than what you're voting for. I actually do. And I mean that with all sincerity. I think you're smarter than what you're voting for. I think you deserve much better. Much, much better than what you've been getting from a party that some of you have been supporting for generations and not even ever really knowing why. Because my dad did. Because my grandfather did. Yeah, and my dad smoked. I know better. It's just, my grandfather didn't wear a seatbelt. I do it because I know better. We learn, we evolve, we adapt. I remember going back to the early days of this program when Robert Smith was on. Robert, why are you a Republican? Well, I don't believe in abortion. Give me an economic. We did this for an hour, by the way. I asked the same question
But
over
we
and over
can't
and over.
discount that.
Why? I'm not discounting it. Give me an economic reason. And for, if I remember correctly, an hour for 60 minutes, I never got a single economic reason until finally he said, I'm done. I have to go.
Yeah, but the first thing I would say
It's
there,
stunning to me. I don't care what you think about abortion. I truly don't. I'd like you to be able to eat and feed yourself and go and send the kids to school, a safe school, by the way.
but nobody ever wins elections by telling voters what they should prioritize, and that what they do prioritize is most important is wrong.
Because they do prioritize what we prioritize. That's the things that we supposedly are supposed to be able to agree on. And it's the things they'll tell you that they prioritize. But then when you try to discuss it, before we end the program, it is 8:20. We have only, I'm going to say 9 minutes left because Kristen and I are due somewhere else, by the way. And
I
I'm
actually
hungry,
am-
and I'm quite hungry, by the way. Don't tell me you have more work to do.
No,
Sunday
I'm
night.
gonna run downstairs and make us dinner because
Oh,
we're both
okay,
starving.
good. Yeah, we are. We didn't eat enough of this.
No,
Not
we did
nearly
not.
enough. You know what you do at a festival, folks? You find a food booth. And you're like, oh my God, that's going to be great. But we have not walked through the other 3/4 of the festival yet. So let's see what we run into.
Are you speaking in the jambalaya that we never came back?
We
in?
really should have. Yeah. No, I mean, that's exactly what I'm speaking about. We should have got that. We should have got that. Either that or I should have ate that pasta that the woman was making out of the cheese wheel. That
good.
was something special. I'd never seen anything like that in my life.
See, I'm telling you,
That's brilliant. That.
if we go to Italy, you're never coming home.
Stop shoving Italy down my throat. I'm not learning another language. I'm old and tired.
Wait a
and
minute.
broken.
You went to Mexico.
They all speak English.
Yeah, most of the Italians speak English.
And the
too.
Irish all speak English. That's a,
Almost
you
everybody.
gotta sift through the accent, but I mean, they all speak English.
You're not gonna run into like one person in Rome who does not speak English. I'm not kidding. you.
They'd all get sick of us at some point. They don't want us there either. At least the Mexicans and the Irish will take us. The Italians don't want
The
us.
Irish aren't taking
The
it.
French
right
don't
now.
want us, I can tell you that. Let me just say this with 8-ish minutes left in the program. I also want to say hello to George and allow him to contribute his regular and vast wisdom to the program. Did you see the chat, by the way?
Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, Ron. Ashley, I just want to go anywhere purple. Just saying. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. I did get a flyer from our local area here, and it reminded me of something. Wherever you might be in the country, I do know that most state, again, I don't know the roster of states that had odd year elections. I believe actually every state has odd year elections. It's just a difference of the level of government to which you might be voting for. Again, New Jersey's voting for a governor, Virginia's voting for a governor, and I believe their entire legislature is up as well. They call it's the House of Delegates and the House of I don't remember what the
I
upper
don't
house. I think the delegates is the lower house, and there's a
So
there's a
you're
name
gonna have
there's a
to
name
ex-
for the
You're
but,
also gonna have to explain what a freeholder is to me
Uh,
because that was apparently there's a lot of.
well, you can't
controversy.
use that anymore.
I've heard there's a lot of controversy over that.
What if in New Jersey?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be county council,
Mhm.
but they used to be called freeholders, and it is a term that goes literally back to the Civil War. You are a free person who holds something. I don't even remember. I could Google it right now, but it's very boring radio to listen to me Google, or DuckDuckGo if you don't want to be tracked. But yeah, it is a
Is it racial?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So
Yes.
I'm going to look this up.
You're gonna yes, you have to because I'll get it wrong. And I don't want to get it wrong, but I'll get it wrong. But it is now there are no longer the county council people are, I believe they're actually now in all 21 counties in New Jersey. And for as big as New Jersey is, by the way, can you imagine that has 21 counties?
So now that I've dragged us
It
down
is a
this-
third of the counties of Pennsylvania, but yet Pennsylvania is more than 3 times the size.
So now that I've dragged us down this tangent, do you know when New Jersey abolished slavery?
Only recently. I think it was only.
No, abolished slavery.
Oh gosh, no. I'd have to look that up. I'd have to have a Google machine right in front of you. You're gonna make me look it up. Oh goodness, New Jersey. How would I even look that up?
Here, I'll do it.
I got it.
You're doing a show.
I know. Well, now I'm typing because you asked me. Isn't this exciting? Listen to me type. When was slavery abolished in New Jersey? I will tell you right now. 1804.
Ooh, okay. So around
Okay,
the
so
same time the slave trade was
1804.
abolished.
So 1804. Now, New Jersey
Was that a manumission?
County term of free. They're going to give me a year. That's not what I mean. They're going to give me duration of term, and that's not what I need. Okay.
No, this
Refer
one-
to individuals who owned land as opposed to leasing it in an amount set by law and was derived from the term freehold. These bodies, there's actually still a town, by the way, called Freehold, New Jersey. These bodies were styled as Board of Justice and chosen freeholders. It's not that simple. There's a racial component to it that's not here on the Google machine. I know that for a fact. It's why Governor Murphy put through
I'm
signed
looking at,
legislation and supported legislation to change it to county commissioners. So now you are, because my whole time, I've just got the article right here. This is from August 21st, 2020. So it's only a little over a year ago. It was 14-ish months ago. Governor Phil Murphy today signed legislation S-855, which requires the title of quote unquote chosen freeholder to be changed to county commissioner. And all boards of chosen freeholders will now be known as the boards of county commissioners. The bill also requires counties to update their letterheads, stationaries, and other writings. Changing the title of freeholder is long overdue. People know the term is offensive and refers to a time when only white male landowners could hold public office, said Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, who's a woman of color herself. She was a former freeholder. She was aware, and I'm quoting now, as a former freeholder, I was fully aware that this title was not inclusive of African-American women such as myself. History is constantly evolving, and our terminology needs to keep up with it to be more reflective of where we are as a society. So yeah, that's now I got it, because I did know that and I was blanking on it, but at least I got it. But yes, that's it. So it meant.
By the way, I just looked it up on New Jersey's state website.
Mhm.
It was the last northern state to end slavery. It was ended by the 13th Amendment in 1866.
That is not what I have in front of me. To understand this historical development, one needs to take 1804, when New Jersey passed its gradual abolition of slavery law and act that delayed the end of slavery in the state for decades. So you might have the final end date.
But there were people, it was probably like in Pennsylvania, it was 1780, but if you were over a certain age, you could not be freed. I think it was if you were over 30. And if your owner registered you, within 6 months of coming into the state, you could not be freed. So there was, while they passed an end to slavery in 1780, the last Pennsylvania slave, I think, passed away in like 1834, maybe even close to 1840, which I didn't learn in school either. So that's another fun one. We learned that slavery was abolished by the state in 1780, but
not exactly, right?
Yeah.
Again, let me just get back to this very, very quick. I get this reminder from my county committee. And I want to just mention it again to every state across the union. wherever you, and really anywhere in the world that you might be listening. Again, you might wonder why I mention these very hyper local issues. How does it affect me? It does affect you. I understand if the Lower Saucon Township Council passes an ordinance that no building can be higher than 4 stories. How does that affect me in Sydney, Australia, or Christchurch, New Zealand, or Sao Paulo, Brazil, or any one of 100 different places around the globe where you're listening? I get that. How government works, what we allow government to do or not do, the kind of people that we allow into government. And when we see our government changing in very fundamental and non-democratic, small d democratic ways, that does affect you. And it's at, hey, look at the damage that Rupert Murdoch has done to Australia and to New Zealand, and then to the UK, and then came here and did the same damn thing. You know what I'm talking about. So, if I'm talking about a particular ordinance or one individual or so on, no, and you're around the world, it probably doesn't affect you, but it does insofar as the general trend of what's happening to governments all over the world. They are becoming more right-wing, more radical right-wing, more fascistic, more authoritarian, pretty much everywhere on the globe, with rare exception, with very rare exception. But anyway, I got this reminder. So anywhere in the United States where you're having a municipal and local election, please know, before we say goodnight to you, it's 8:31, and I'm saying goodnight very shortly.
Oh, I gotta go.
Please know what your voter registration status is. Check it. If you are not sure for any reason, please check it. Please check it. And even though it's 2021 and not a presidential election year or not a congressional election year, there are important elections happening all over this country. And if you are eligible to vote, and if you're not eligible to vote and you can still register to be eligible, I beg you to do so. Take part in the process. Be a part of the process. If your vote meant so little, if it was so meaningless, then you wouldn't have an entire structure to try to take it away from you. And that's exactly what is happening here in this country and in 37 states across the country. There's even solid blue states where Republicans are trying to suppress the vote. If your vote was so meaningless, then they would not be trying to take it from you. Please go vote. George, do you have anything that you want to add before we say goodnight to the good folks and before we beat it over to our revolution?
No, sir, I do not. But was it you talked about like my wisdom, before and all this other stuff, and I had to actually had to stop laughing, with it, like long enough. So I was on the floor laughing. That's why I couldn't get to the mic.
I think you have wisdom. Also, you'll see on your screen, if you're still watching across Facebook, and if you're just listening on the radio, let me tell you what's there. A wonderful graphic that George was kind enough to make. And it has the congressional switchboard number 202-224-3121. What this is a central phone number that literally takes you to an operator, basically, at Capitol Hill. If you do not know who your representatives are, or is it whom your representatives are, if you don't know who your senators are, and you tell them what state you are from or what zip code you are from, they will connect you with the proper office, the proper member of the House of Representatives and or your 2 senators, and you can speak to their offices. This is an extremely effective tool. All of these phone calls are recorded. And I don't mean recorded, I don't think so. Well, they might be recorded as far as exactly what you're saying. I don't know that they record them, that way, but they're recorded insofar as if 100 people call Senator Casey's office in a day, that 50 of them feel this way and 50 others feel another way. So that said, it does, it doesn't matter what the issue is, I guess, for the sake of my example, but if a staffer answers 100 phone calls, they are recording what people are telling them as far as, we agree with this, we don't agree with this, we kind of agree with part of this, why aren't you focusing on this, I need help with it. That's happening. Phone calls are an extremely effective way to talk to your elected representatives. I beg you to do so. If and or when you should call these offices, be polite, be nice, and be very succinct, like 30 to 60 seconds. Because that type of call has a much better chance of actually penetrating into that office and moving up the chain of command. If you just call and swear and, get sarcastic, well, I get sarcastic all the time, but I mean, just swear, scream, and all, it doesn't get anywhere. It probably will get ignored, almost exclusively will get ignored. But if you call and say, look, I'm calling to speak about this particular issue, or I'm calling to ask about this particular piece of legislation, I believe the senator, I believe the representative should be supporting this, or I believe they should not be supporting this, whatever it might be, those calls are recorded. I'm telling you, I know it for a fact, they're recorded. It's a mini poll. It's basically like a phone poll, and that report gets pushed up through the office as far as the policy advisors for that particular elected official. This many people called to say you should be supporting this, and this many people called to say you should not, and so on and so on and so on. It's a very, very effective way. I hope that you will take the time to do so. 202-224-3121 is a congressional switchboard. Please get vaccinated. Please wear a mask where it is required or requested. The interesting thing about this mask debate in schools, the media has portrayed that somehow 50% of the country wants them and 50% doesn't. It's not even close, by the way, not even close. About 74% of people nationwide support mask mandates in school. 74. Only about 17% of people are your anti-maskers. The ones that are showing up to school board meetings, shouting, screaming, threatening, simply because we don't want our kids to wear a mask. Isn't that amazingly ironic how it's my body, my choice when it comes to wearing a mask, but not a woman over her own health? The hypocrisy of it. Somehow the media has made us think that we're half and half on this issue. We are not even close. Stop giving 17% of these people the space and the oxygen in the room as the 74%. It's not the same thing. They are a minority, and by a long way. They are a vocal and radical and violent minority, but they are a minority. Ask you every single week to please take care of your neighbors, check on them, especially if they are older. If they are our valued seniors, all our seniors should be valued. Ask you to please check on them, even if it's something as simple as taking the garbage cans out to the curb so they can be emptied, making a grocery run, maybe picking up prescriptions at a pharmacy for them, anything. If we can check on the valued senior members of our society, that's how we help build bridges. I have senior citizens here in the complex where I live. I know we don't agree on a lot of things from a political standpoint, but we have lovely conversations. They are wonderful people. They make this place a very, very wonderful place to live. And so have a conversation, help each other out. Let's rebuild this society. We can. I absolutely believe it with all my heart. We can. We can still have bitter, deep disagreement. We can still take care of each other. We can still look out for one another. So I hope that we will do that. And so until next week, now I have to tell you, this is a bit of an odd thing because I had 2 whole months of shows scheduled, actually almost 2.5 months of shows scheduled out. And I don't anymore. I have nothing on my schedule, like literally, I think till the end of the year. And so I hate that. That's a very uneasy feeling. But here's our plan. The plan is to focus on hyper local elections. And what I mean by hyper local, again, your township council, your school boards, your local tax collector, a recorder of deeds, all these things. I want to really focus on the most local, close to you elections and offices as humanly possible for the next possibly as much as 3 weeks. I'm currently undecided as to whether we're going to have a live program for you on Halloween, especially since Halloween falls on a Sunday. It is an off day, obviously, for work and for the kids from school. Well, for most people who work. I shouldn't say everybody, obviously not for everybody. So I'm not sure what we're going to do yet on Halloween, especially with trick or treat happening here at our home, in our complex and in our township that particular night. It might be a bit difficult to have a program. Not 100% sure what to do about Halloween yet, but I will, of course, will let you know in the next couple of weeks. But that said, we are going to focus on local issues, local elections. Let me say this out loud. So I know a lot of people will miss this, and I'll post stuff on the Facebook page, to reinforce this. But if you have a local race, I punch the mic every show. If you have a local election happening in your township, maybe you're a local candidate in your township, your town, your city, your county, anywhere in the United States, anywhere around the globe, for all I care. You could be running for something in the UK. I'd be happy to have you join the program. But usually the time difference, it's the middle of the night over there now. But we want you on this program. If you are running for a local municipal town, village, constable somewhere in the middle of Idaho, we want you on the program. If you're running for your town council in the middle of Nebraska, in Michigan, in Florida, and I don't care where, Alaska, I don't care where, you are welcome on this program. We would like to have you on the program to talk about the deep, deep importance of voting, of being a regular voter, and local issues, how national issues affect local issues, and so on and so on and so on. So you are welcome on this program. Contact us on the Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. We will see you next week. We will be here. That's the plan. I don't know if it'll just be us having a chat, whether we will have a slate of local candidates from around the country. I certainly hope that we do. But that's the plan for the rest of October. Local candidates, local elections, local issues, the issues on your main streets throughout the United States. And then we'll have to think about what we're going to do for Halloween. I'm not doing a program in costume. Telling you that right now. We may or may not take off Halloween. We'll see. But that said, that's us for this week. That's the end of the program for October 3rd. Remember, if you missed any of tonight's program, you can go to our home group Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. The show will be pinned to the top of the page. You can watch and listen to it, the entire program, from there. And you can also go to Instagram, That Other Side of Information. I will have it on my LinkedIn, Jeff Kennedy. It will also be, The other big place is YouTube, of course, our YouTube channel, which is also called That Other Side of Information, and you will get everything from there. That is our program for this week. For associate technical producer Lynn Dare, for chief technical producer, I just promoted him, George Dare, for the woman who made all of this possible, and I mean that with all sincerity. She's been extremely busy with local youth athletics in Allentown, so we have not heard from her in quite a while, but we miss her and we always think about her, and we would not be here without her. And that's April Riddick. For DJ Lex and DJ Earl at hot101.net, the leadership team there, our family at hot101.net. For Marquise, Whitney, Taekwon, and Sarge. I might be doing a show with Sarge coming up in the future. A really, really different kind of science fiction-y show. Fun. It'll be fun. It'll be a fun show. But we're thinking about doing that possibly before Halloween. That would be the most appropriate time to do it, before Halloween. To them, to the entire family, all the folks I mentioned there at TCP, thank you. And finally, for, I think I mentioned everybody, for Kristen. And great thanks to our guest, Tamara. Maurice, we're thinking about you. Look forward to having you on the program in the future. I'm Jeff Kennedy. Please have a wonderful, wonderful week. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Oh, get vaccinated. Please, please get vaccinated. Take care of yourselves and each other. We shall see you again. Wrong mouse. I was going to click on the software to end the program and I grabbed the wrong mouse. I only have, I think, 3 of them in front of me. Thank you for being here. We respect all of you. We welcome all of you, and we thank you for continuing to support the program. Share our program anywhere. Share our YouTube channel. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe everywhere that we are. Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere that you can, Facebook, anywhere that you can find us. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. Share the program. Share the page. Share all of our social media. Help us continue to make this program a success, because we couldn't do it without you. Thanks again. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe, and we will see you next week. Good night.